San Mateo County Harbor Commission meeting to order. Can we get the roll call, please?
Commissioner Bernardo?
Here.
Commissioner Davis?
Here.
Commissioner Matute?
Here.
Commissioner Carvana?
Here.
President Brennan?
Here. This is an opportunity for public comment for 3 minutes for each member of the public. And I have a slip for Brian Rogers.
Yeah, okay. Basically, it came to my attention a few minutes ago that during dues or bills and claims that some reimbursements were in place, but they were some real odd numbers. All 3 commissioners went to the same event, and all 3 had very different numbers. So I started checking and found something odd, and looked back into history and found that one commissioner in December of 13 requested the policy for alcohol purchases, and was rather bent out of shape that staff had made a mistake in doing a staff appreciation event. The restaurant had included wine in the price of the event. It was a mistake, oh well. But prior to the trip this last, January I think it was made, HR sent out the policy again to all the commissioners going to the trip and said, alcohol can't be expensed. So then I looked through and pulled a list of all of the expenses and the things turned in, and one of the things I noticed was that when 2 commissioners dined together on the 3rd night of the event, they did the right thing and they broke out alcohol and paid for it separately and expensed it correctly, with just food being expensed. But one commissioner on the first 2 nights failed to do this, pretty blatantly, just including alcohol in their bill when they dined alone, or at least when they invoiced it alone. And that's on the one evening that they can tell itemizing the dinner. On the other one, based on the second 2 nights, I'm assuming there was alcohol in the first one, but I don't know because nobody can come up with the actual broken down event. So essentially what we have is a commissioner who, when somebody's looking, does the right thing, and when nobody's looking, tries to slide something through. And it's a pretty minor dollar amount, but it's still more the behavior that I'm concerned by. The other thing I saw was that one of the commissioners has attended the same class twice in 2 years. Were they not paying attention the first time they went? No other commissioner goes every 2 years. That seems kind of odd that the district is paying for one individual who isn't paying attention. And the question is, did she pay attention this event? Did she actually pay attention to follow the rules, and will she follow the rules? And my doubts are there because so far, since she became president, she hasn't bothered to follow the rules and has blatantly stated that she doesn't care. So, those are a concern. And I wanted to make sure that everybody knew that was a concern and that people were looking at it. Thanks.
Thank you. And just to follow up, as a point of clarification, only 2 commissioners have received reimbursement for expenses in the last couple of months. So that's something that Mr. Rogers may have overlooked.
So do I get to do a point of order and explain that you're not supposed to respond to my comment? You're just supposed to accept them and move on.
Thank you.
Having an interchange is just not acceptable in the rules.
Thank you. Okay, next we have consent calendar. We have minutes for special meeting February 18, 2015. Item 1 and item 2 is certified employment list for accounting specialist.
I want to pull item number 1, please.
Okay, any other changes?
I believe you have a comment card on number 2, so you have to pull it in.
So we're pulling item 1 and item 2. So let's start with the item 1, which is minutes of special meeting February 18, 2015.
Thank you. I'd like to refer to Deputy Secretary Nixon on a change of date.
I inadvertently inserted March 4th minutes, which are not ready to be adopted. So I'd just like to pull the item in its entirety and bring it back to the next meeting.
So having said that, I would like to table item number 1 until the next meeting.
Okay. So item number 2, which is certified employment list for accounting specialist. And we have well, first, could the staff explain what that list is?
Sure. The certified employment list was created for the district to enable them to have a qualified pool of candidates to pick from in the event of staff turnover. The last accounting specialist certified list was approved by the board in 2008. There is no financial impact in in adopting this certified list. It is a list that the district can pull from if replacement of staff is needed. And the board just needs to approve the certified list, which is good for 1 year. And it can be brought back to you again to be extended for another year.
So I just have a point of clarification or a question, yes.
Sure.
So you said that the last time the list was approved was in 2008?
In 2008 is the last time that an accounting specialist certified list was done.
2008?
We couldn't find another one sooner than that.
Okay. So the people that were on the previous list had been on there since 2008?
No, the list expires after, if it's not brought back to the board after the first year to extend it after the second year, so it would expire after the first year, or it's brought back to you and extended for 1 more year and then it expires. And then you have to do it all over again.
So we haven't had one then since 2009?
Yeah, I would say either 2009 or even 2010 would be the
last?
Yeah, because it was extended for the 1 year.
Okay,
for
so
2 years.
So this list is a new list, and how does one qualify for the list, just so I understand?
We solicit for applications, they're reviewed by Human Resources and by the Finance Director, and then the top candidates are interviewed, and then it's all whittled down from there, so you pick your top contenders who qualify.
Okay, thank you for explaining that.
Sure.
So we have,
Question.
oh, yeah.
And Ms. Nixon, I just want to clarify for those in the audience who may not be aware of how public agencies typically work. This is common for public agencies.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes, we are going to be doing one for the accountant. We always want to have a certified list because what happens is the process is a little lengthy due to other activities that are going on in the harbor. So it's better just to have the list so that way, again, when it comes available, we just bring it to you and are able to hire someone off the list instead of starting the process and then we're in dire need.
Thank you. Thank you.
So next we have a public comment on item 2, and that's Charlie Midcalf, McCullough. Sorry, Charlie, I just did not seem to get your last name right.
Hello, and I will make this quick because I'm actually looking for a little clarification. I raced down here today to speak on this item. However, in looking on my phone, I've now been clarified as to what the item actually is for. It's for accounting specialist, not technician, which I believe is one step above the technician. I wasn't aware that that list had not been filled or compiled since 2008. I know at the time that I tested for accounting technician, that list expired on January 31st of 2014. I know there were others that tested at that time for the accounting specialist. I believe it's the same test. There's just a separate set of higher and harder questions. I wasn't aware that that test was even available at the time that I tested, but another temporary employee who took the test at the same time as me also tested for that position. So again, this is kind of like not really related because it's not really the accounting technician job, which I was on the certified list for that expired. But I just, since I was here, I thought I'd go ahead and speak, and now that, thanks from Debbie's help, I clarified. So that's all I guess I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. So next we have new business, continued. Item 3, proclamation for Charles White.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, thank you.
Oh.
I do need a motion in a second to adopt the certified list.
I move that we certify and adopt the employment list for accounting specialist.
I'll second.
Roll call?
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner David?
Aye.
Commissioner Matoush?
Aye.
Commissioner Paravano?
Aye.
President Brennan?
Aye. And again, now new business, item 3, which is proclamation for Charles White. And I'm going to start by reading the proclamation. San Mateo County Harbor District to honor Charles White, proclaimed by the Board of Harbor Commissioners that whereas Charles White retired as acting harbor master on March 20th, 2015, after 30 years of distinguished service to the San Mateo County Harbor District, and whereas Charles White began his harbor district career in 1985 as a marina attendant at Oyster Point Marina, where he rose through the ranks to assist harbor master in 1989, and whereas Charles White assumed the position of assistant harbor master at Oyster Point Marina Park in 1989 and provided exemplary leadership there until 2014, when he accepted the challenge of serving as acting harbor master Oyster Point until his retirement in 2015, and whereas Charles White was known by harbor tenants, visitors, other agency personnel, business people, and district staff as an individual of integrity, competence, high energy, and commitment to excellence in his work ethic, and one who strove to treat others with courtesy and consideration. And whereas Charles White always sought to effect positive change by his leadership, his training of staff, and his interactions with the Harbor Commission and his fellow managers. And whereas Charles White has served the district, its governing board, and staff with dedication, distinction, and good humor. Now, therefore, be it known that the Board of Harbor Commissioners hereby honors Charles White for his service to the San Mateo County Harbor District.
Well, I want to thank the Harbor Commission for that proclamation. I want to thank all the people I've worked with for 30 years. I want to thank my wife and my wife.
Where is she? There she is.
Don't be so excited.
Yeah, it's been a great run, and I just want to thank you all. That is, you know, I hope the people that I've worked with were touched, because they all touched me. So I wish the board and the Harbor District well in the future, and good luck.
Thank you very much. Yeah. And on behalf of the Harbor Commission, I want to sincerely thank you for your service. You've had an incredibly impressive career. 30 years is shows real dedication to public service, and the entire county and Bay Area has really benefited from that. So thank you so much for your service. And I also want to remind you that you promised to give me your sage advice from time to time. So I look forward to getting that in the future.
You'll get it.
Thank you.
If I may, Madam President?
Yes.
May I say a word? I'd like to thank Charles on behalf of the crew and myself. He's been there a long time. The knowledge that he has of the facility is unrivaled. I mean, you can't, that knowledge comes just by experience and by doing the things he's done. I've watched Charles, I've come to him with problems like, hey, you know, we got some sprinklers that aren't working, and I can't find this valve for the sprinkler. And he goes, well, I know right where that is. I'm like, really? I go, I can't find it on the plans or anything. And we'd walk out to the middle of this field. He'd reach in, he'd take out his pocket knife. He'd go, it's right. Boom, right there. Buried under 2 inches of sod, you know. I'm like, how do you know this? He's like, well, I put it in there, you know. And this happened time and time again. I mean, he's been there so long. Sir Francis Drake came into the harbor one time and asked for directions. That's how long he's been there. I mean, he is by far a huge mentor of mine, and working with him for the past 12 years has been just nothing but a pleasure, and everyone feels that way about you. And if I can be half the assistant harbor master that you were, I'd be proud. So thank you very much.
I'd be proud of you too.
Yeah, thank you.
So can we get a motion?
I move that we approve the proclamation for Charles White.
And a second.
Roll call?
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner Davis?
Aye.
Commissioner Mathush?
Aye.
Commissioner Carvalho? President Brennan?
Aye. So we have item 4, draft preliminary operating and capital budget for fiscal year 2015-16. And we have received a few changes. So I'm gonna, Debbie, are you gonna get the report here or?
There's not really a report, just a preliminary look at the numbers. The change was that the capital projects were just placed in the wrong column on page 8. So that's why we have it corrected. Other than that, if you take any questions back to the director of finance, this is just a draft preliminary look at the numbers, and the budget workshop will be held on April 15th at the Oyster Point Yacht Club.
And if I could just add one other correction that I received from the Director of Finance, which is on the first page of the budget, there's a bullet point list of dates. The second date says May 20th, the preliminary budget will be presented for adoption, and in fact, that's going to be May 6th.
Well, I'm sorry, which page again?
The very first page has a series of bullet points scheduled, and the second item on which says May 20th is the date for adoption, scheduled for adoption of the preliminary budget, and that is May 6th, says your Director of Finance.
So are the corrections going to be included into a future packet, or how will the corrections be available to the public? I'm wondering.
The correction, you mean the additional correction that was handed out tonight to page 8?
That, well, I know that's already here.
Yeah, and it's also on the website.
But any corrections that we might make tonight, or changes that we might have tonight, will those, when's the next?
The budget's going to continue to be on the agenda every meeting.
So we'll see that at the next meeting, the changes, okay. So who would like to go first? The budget?
You want to have a discussion?
Well, does anybody have any questions or comments or changes or anything?
All the things I looked at was under memberships. Let's see. Just basically, I think there was roughly $17,000.
Which page? It
Page.
should be at the bottom of each, the page number.
Well, I'm trying to find the column.
Wait, before you get going, let me interrupt you. We have a speaker slip I missed, so let's have public comment.
Tom. Page 7.
Oh, Jim Steele.
Thank you, President Brennan and members of the board. My name is Jim Steele. I'm the Assistant City Manager for the City of South San Francisco, so have a vested interest in the harbor, the Oyster Point Harbor, as do you. And I also was the Finance Director for 15 years, so I pay attention to budget. So I had a couple of comments and questions to pass on. I realize your Finance Director isn't here tonight, so it's fine just to take note of them. The first.
Could you tell us the page numbers?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Page 26 of 39.
26.
So on there's a line called contractual services professional.
Yes.
And again, just because I have an interest in Oyster Point Marina, I noticed the budget is going down from 185,000 plus to about 79,000. Just curious what that was, hoping there's no degradation of services there. Another comment, just in general, I'm not used to seeing depreciation as a budgeted item. It's a non-cash item. It doesn't.
Which page?
All throughout.
Okay.
Depreciation is something that the accountants put on the expenditure statements at the end of the year So if you're budgeting for capital projects and depreciation, you're kind of double budgeting because they reflect the same assets. So just a comment, then the third point is it would be really nice to see reserves, because I know when one spends money on capital projects, often one draws from reserves like one does it at a house. You know, you don't necessarily pay your current salary out to fix your roof. You have savings and you use that. So it'd be good to kind of see a discussion of overall reserve balances and draws from reserves, et cetera, to get a better overall picture of the finances.
Just to clarify, you're noticing that reserves are not listed clearly in the budget?
Yeah, and that would be really helpful just to get an overview.
Okay.
And that's really it, so I appreciate the time.
Yeah, thank you very much for your input. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Mateusz, you were saying?
On page 7 of 39, regarding memberships, exams, subscriptions, I see administration has got a budget amount of $17,500. Pillar Point and Oyster Point have 400 and 250 respectively. And I would just request that we perhaps add $1,000 and split it up between the two harbors towards the personnel, the Harbor Patrol. There will be memberships like California State Safety Boating Office Association or something. And while not every person has to be a member, I would like to see a member or two out of each harbor so that we can gain the benefits of exposure to grants and sharing safety and operating procedures with other harbors. So that was one thing that I saw.
Just to follow up on that, maybe our harbor masters could chime in and explain, do any harbor patrol members other than, say, harbor master have memberships?
Yeah, at Pillar Point, with California Boating Safety Officers Association, in the past, the Harbor District did pay for the association fees, which are, I believe, $25 a year
And what's
per
it called
employee.
again?
It's the California Boating Officers Association.
Okay.
One of our patrolmen was the president of that board for approximately 4 or 5 years. They hold yearly regional conferences and then a 3-day training symposium, where all the 3-day training symposium is all the officers that are in the boating get together with a bunch of vendors, and it's a great networking for the harbors. I think in the last 2 years, the district has quit paying those association fees for the Harbor Patrol.
So that's something that the harbor patrol would
The
want
patrolmen
to
would
have.
like to see that, yeah, most of them.
And would it be just for a couple of members or for all the harbor?
Well, they used to do all the members. I can't speak for Oyster Point,
Yeah, we did.
but I believe they did Oyster Point too. And for $25 a year, you know, it's not a big fee.
So all patrol members, I'm just making note here,
Sure.
all harbor patrol were members in past years.
They were,
Yeah,
they were
and the-
invited to be members, some people opted.
Yeah, some people opted to be out. And then with the California Harbor Masters Association, or Port Captains, Harbor Masters and Port Captains Association, that was usually just the harbor masters or the assistant harbor masters.
Okay. And so in recent years, have the assistant harbor masters been?
Well, we paid for it
members?
on our own.
So just the harbor master, the district's paid for?
I believe so. I couldn't tell you that.
Okay. We can find out. Can you remind me about that later? I don't want to forget. I'm making a note here.
If you ask me.
Okay, thank you. Tom, did you have anything else?
No, that was the one thing so far.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Yeah.
On on page, I want to start on page 3 of 39 with the pie charts and the budgeted revenues. There is in the top pie chart, there's a small green piece in there of 1% that's operating grants. And I would really like to see for the district to focus on that in the future. There's actually in the community sustainability plan in the very back, there are several options for agencies and organizations to apply for grant money for. And I would like to see the district get more funding through that and become a little bit more independent from tax revenue. So maybe we can make that in the back of our heads a goal for the future. And
just a clarifying question, is there a way in the budget that you would like to see this area more clearly illustrated, so that we're not just looking at a sliver of a pie chart, maybe there's more context or something, you have any input there?
no, I just like to see that piece of the pie chart increase, over the years.
But no changes to the budget?
No.
Okay. Well, while you're mentioning the pie chart, it seems like we could, in the past, I sort of remember that we've had pie charts that explained the reserves a little bit they're sort of excluded from this budget. So if we could get more graphs or charts, pie charts, whatever, that show what's going on with our reserves, what different types of reserve funds we have, which are accessible, which are not, what they're set aside for specifically, and how we are drawing down on reserves. Just some more visual clarification about those sorts of things, that would be helpful. And then also, usually we have, let's see, in here we have the taxes shown at 43%. And I guess what I'm looking for is, when we're looking at these charts, a little more historical information. So we're looking at, the same pie charts or graphs from some past years. So we have historical data to do a comparison from, because we're just looking at 2015, 2016, and we're not able to follow trends by just looking at the current budget in front of us without having that data to look at as a comparison. I hope that
Yeah, I think it's going to be part of the workshop. This is just your first look at numbers.
Okay.
So I think it'll be
more detailed.
Yeah,
yeah, and Debbie usually does include a lot of that sort of thing at the workshop.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that the finance director, I hope I get your title right, for South San Francisco is able to join us at our budget workshop, because I think that's a really good time to kind of drill down and get more specifics. So that'll be coming up.
Assistant City Manager.
Oh, sorry, Assistant City Manager, thank you. And any other questions?
I have one more question.
Oh, yeah.
Going to, actually, I can have my punch over, the page number is 23 or 39. There is, under capital projects, there is in a harbor dredging budgeted for Kings Point Harbor, and I was wondering what area that is roughly budgeted for. That's only around the launch ramp, or if that covers, is that planned for a larger area?
I'm sorry, you said page 23?
Yeah.
Yeah.
21.
23.
39. There is, there's $70,000 budgeted currently.
So, through the chair, the 70,000 would just cover the maintenance dredging at the launch ramp. If
Okay.
we did all the dredging we needed in the harbor, it would be a whole lot more.
Okay, thanks.
And how is that, because we dredged it a few years ago, how's that holding up? Is it filling in again?
Well, the winter storms weren't as we know, we haven't had any rain, so it hasn't been terribly bad, but there has been some silting in. I don't recall the actual cost of the last dredging. I believe it was more than the 70,000 that we budgeted for this coming year. But I think we decided to put this in every year as a maintenance project just of the launch ramp. The harbor does need a lot more dredging than just this one area. But I think we're hoping that with the Army Corps and the Surfers Beach and putting maybe some of the spoils over at the West End Trail, that'll all come later.
Okay, thank you.
John, how would you rate that high spot by the public hoist? You guys have to run over frequently.
You know, again, that's, you know, you look on the scales, you know, and the launch ramps are major, where we get a lot of our money from, so we try to keep that open as much as possible. And as you know, in the past years, we've been down 2, 3, 4 ramps, or lanes out of the 6 ramps. So that's where this comes from. The outer harbor with the transient boats coming in, along the west and east breakwater, and along Mateo's Pier. Several years ago, we did the federal channel study, dredging from the from the entrance to Mateo's Pier and to the entrance of the inner breakwall. So inside the harbor, we really haven't looked at too much. Again, that's up to you, you know, if you guys tell us to go ahead and do it and we want to spend the money, you know, we'll do it, but.
Well, I guess it's something we have to look at for some of the, especially the high spots. I know there's a real big bump there right by the public hoist.
Yeah, just on the outside of D-Dock.
So, is that something that you want to ask to have considered included in this budget, or do you want to wait till we get to the workshop to bring that?
Let's wait till we get to the workshop, and perhaps we can get some other estimates as well.
Yeah.
You look like you have some items for us.
Just one, actually, just
Okay.
one. Because I know we'll be talking about this budget more in depth at the workshop. One thing that really just stands out in my mind that I'd like to bring everyone's attention to, and something to just really think about, is on page 7 of 39, under Budget Summary Operating Expenses. You'll notice that probably the largest item on this list is repair and maintenance, which of course is operational. And then we also have property and casualty insurance, which is another big ticket item. I see vessel destruction, but one of the large items on this page is legal services for $320,000. I'd be curious historically to see how the Harbor District has been doing in terms of its legal services, because this is whopping, in my opinion. And if you look at the last page of this budget, I'm just going to read it. Total commission budget for fiscal year 2015-16 is $829,635 compared to $276,169 projected for 2014-15, mostly due to a non-election year. However, legal fees are estimated at $150,000 or 15% higher than the previous year, fiscal year 2014-15, projected due to anticipated increase in legal costs. So I do want to, again, just put this out there that we constantly have to think about legal risk, and all of the votes that we make and all of the choices we make here on this board have legal consequences potentially, and obviously it was $300,000 worth of legal risk. So let's keep that in mind, and again, I'd like to talk about this further at the budget meeting, but that's all I'd like to say. Thank you.
Good point, thank you for that.
Is that going through?
Commissioner Carolina, do you have anything?
Yeah.
Next meeting.
So I also wanted to point out on page 21 of 39, we have the West Trail erosion carryover money, which means that's money that was set aside in a past budget. for fixing the trail. And I just wanted to point out that the erosion on the trail has gotten significantly worse and does pose a public safety hazard, and I believe creates some risk for the district. So it might be good maybe at the workshop to take another look at that and make sure that we have the right amount of money set aside, and you know, kind of get a status update on where that's at and how to move that along, since it does affect public safety. And I'd have a similar sort of comment for Romeo here, which is another one of those sort of lingering public safety concerns, which has been budgeted in the past, and then the money was taken away, and then maybe the money needs to come back, and it looks like it's included in here. At least I thought it was. Let's see. Do you see it, anybody?
25 and 39.
25.
So 23.
23?
Oh, I'm sorry, 23.
Yep. So we have it back in the budget, which is good, I think, and it's for $650,000, which is a lot of money, and it's something the district has been talking about for a number of years now, so I'm glad to see it in the budget. On page 18 of 39, this is just a minor little typo. I think that there's a correction that needs to be made in the fiscal year 14-15. I think that's supposed to be fiscal year 15-16. And there's a couple of those where I think that it was just a cut and paste type of thing, needs to be corrected. And then on page 33 of 39, this is a question that I could get an answer to later, obviously, but there's something in here, item 1, for fiscal year 15-16, the commission budget for salaries and payroll expenses is should be deleted, 76,000 versus 126,000 projected for fiscal year 14-15, so that's a reduction. Due to a decrease in termination benefits, only one commissioner became eligible for the termination benefit during her term. No other commissioners are eligible for this benefit. Maybe our council can answer this question. Is this an indication that the one commissioner who received termination benefits is now no longer receiving them? What does this mean?
I'm afraid your council does not have an answer for you. I don't know what it means.
Okay, well, we can find out later. I didn't understand that one. And I do have other questions, but I really would prefer to wait until we have our finance director with us to get into the details, and I also look forward to her presentation. She always gives a good PowerPoint presentation, which helps me understand her budget immensely. Are there any, this isn't something we have to approve, is it? Okay, any other comments or questions? All right, hearing none, we're going to move on to item 5. Authorize award of contract to JJA CPA in the amount of $3,600 for auditing services. And my understanding is there's a new memo. Doesn't appear we have any public comment on this. And I have not had a chance to read this memo because I think this just came in today. So I'm going to read the memo because I haven't read it, and I doubt anyone else here has read it, or maybe all of you have read it, but I haven't read it. So we have here a memo from our finance director, Deborah Galarza, subject, additional information to item 5 for March 18th board meeting, clarification of agenda item 5. When the board voted to assign the treasurer duties to the acting general manager, it effectively took an external review of the district's finances to an internal review. In addition, the treasurer suggested that he could, in turn, appoint a deputy treasurer to act in his place. Just for clarification, I believe that who's being referred to here is our harbor master, who currently is the district's treasurer. That person was suggested to be the finance director. This would make the internal review become no review because the treasurer function reviews and approves the director of finance's reports. See table below. It may be best explained by example. Previously, the accounts payable function was performed as follows. An approved invoice would be submitted to staff. Staff would enter the information into the accounting module to set up payment. Staff would have check stock in locked drawer and process checks. And finally, staff would reconcile the bank statements monthly. The same staff member performed all the accounts payable duties. When the auditors reviewed this task, they suggested that there be a segregation of duties to mitigate any potential fraud. Staff could potentially create an invoice, enter it for payment, process a check, and make that it cleared the bank during, I think she meant that make sure that it cleared the bank during the reconciliation. The district adhered to the auditor's suggestions, and now staff receives the invoices and enters it into the system. The director of finance reviews the invoice and approves prior to posting to pay. The list of checks needed to cut are submitted to the accountant, who has check stock in a locked drawer and signs out the number of checks to the accounts payable staff. The bank reconciliation is performed by the accountant and reviewed by the director of finance. Evaluating segregation of duties and transparency is critical in an agency, and in particular a public sector finance department. Herein poses the problem. Basically, by not having an external treasurer and internalizing it, the function then works similar to the previous accounts payable function concern described above. Nobody else is reviewing staff's work. The deputy treasurer is the finance director. The list of duties currently are as follows. Finance prepares bills and claims reports, quarterly investment report, bank investment reconciliation, bad debt write-offs, wire transfers, general manager expenditures. Treasurer approves bills and claims report, quarterly investment report, bank investment reconciliation, bad debt write-offs, wire transfers, general manager expenditures. As stated in the original memo, the request is to have our auditor evaluate these tasks and identify any possible problems, offer their professional suggestions in order to be proactive in addressing any segregation of duties, transparency, or risk. They have stated in their memo to mostly evaluate the GM performing the treasurer function, and it will be discussed to also evaluate the deputy treasurer function as well. The request to approve the JJA CPA engagement is needed because a task that was performed by an independent external person, commissioner, has now been assigned to an internal employee process. In the spirit of transparency and fiscal responsibility, this task should be approved. Okay?
I'd like to make a motion that we award a contract with JJA CPA in the amount of $3,600 for auditing services.
Second.
And we haven't gotten a report from the staff, so can we get a staff report on this?
I can take questions back. Everything I was told is pretty self-explanatory. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer them.
Well, could you go over the item 5 here so that the board and the public are aware of the concerns in item 5?
You want me to read the memo?
Yeah, that'd be great. I'm losing my reading voice. Thank you.
So the subject is treasurer's rules, transparency, and internal/external controls. action suggestions listed below. Number 1 is to approve the JJA CPA engagement in the amount of $3,600 as specified below. Option 2 is do not approve the JJA CPA engagement. 3 is to perform an RFP process for this engagement from a CPA firm independent of our annual auditors. At the January 21st meeting, the board appointed Acting General Manager Scott Grindy as treasurer. In a verbal conversation, Grindy had stated that he appointed the Director of Finance as deputy treasurer. Prior to acceptance, I requested our auditors, JJA CPA, to perform an engagement to address any potential transparency, segregation of duties, and/or internal or external control issues. Due to my fiscal responsibility to the district, I asked that they perform the task as soon as possible. They stated they could begin as soon as February 23rd. However, due to the board's actions on January 7th, that they must approve all contractual services, this engagement was canceled. Commissioner Brennan has recently been in contact directly with our auditors and is able to communicate this discussion with the entire board. And then attached to it is the engagement from the auditor. So I don't know what they would be performing.
And the engagement
Bless you.
states, dated February 4th, 2015. Dear Scott, we are pleased to confirm our understanding of the services we are to provide for the San Mateo County Harbor District. This letter will confirm the nature and limitations of the services we will provide and the various responsibilities and other terms of engagement. We agree to apply procedures to review the internal control process of the district's treasurer as of June 30th, 2015 in accordance with district policy. These procedures will be applied for the purpose of reporting our findings in regarding to the results of the procedures performed as compared to the policy. The procedures we will perform have been agreed to by the specified parties to this engagement listed as follows: Joseph J. Arch, President CEO of JJA CPA, and Scott Grindy, Acting General Manager of the San Mateo County Harbor District. These agreed upon procedures are enumerated as follows. Review the procedures of the district treasurer for deficiencies, significant deficiencies, or material weaknesses in internal control. Provide process improvement recommendations based on the results of our findings. Provide the results of the above procedures in a report format. We will conduct our engagement in accordance with the I don't even know what that was. I have no idea. Standards for agreed upon procedures, engagements of the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants. The specified parties listed above are solely responsible for the sufficiency of the agreed upon procedures for their purposes. Therefore, we make no representations as to the sufficiency of these procedures for the purpose of the specified parties or for the other purpose. The agreed upon procedures are not designed to constitute an examination or review of the subject matter. Therefore, we will not express reasonable or limited assurances on the subject matter. We have no obligation to perform any procedures beyond those agreed to by the specified parties as enumerated in this letter of engagement. If for any reason we are unable to complete the procedures, we will not issue a report as a result of this engagement. Our procedures are also not designed to detect errors or fraud that is immaterial to the subject matter information. However, we will inform you if any material errors or fraud that come to our attention unless clearly inconsequential. Our responsibility is limited to the period covered by our procedures and does not extend to matters that might arise during any later periods for which we are not engaged. At the conclusion of our agreement, we may also request certain written representations from you about the subject matter information and related matters. We will present a written report listing the procedures and our related findings. This report will be intended for use by and restricted to the use of the specified parties as identified above. and our report will contain such restricted use language. We will maintain the confidentiality of your personal information and apply procedures to protect against any unauthorized release of your personal information to third parties. And then the sort of the legalese kind of continue on here. For several pages, so I'm gonna leave it at that. Then there are 2 letters which the board received from JJA CPA on February 23rd and February 25th. However, the board was only provided with these letters this week. Do we know why it took so long for the board to get these letters?
I would have to ask the director of finance. I'm not involved in
Okay.
that.
So for some reason, there was a big lag, and we weren't provided with the letters at our last meeting, but we did receive them this week. So in the February 23rd letter, I'll just highlight one little detail. It says, typically, the treasurer function is performed by an individual with a finance background or someone that is at a level that is below the district manager, such as the finance director. Then on February 25th, there's another letter, and this is also from JJA CPA.
No, excuse me, I'm sorry, if I could just interrupt. If we aren't really supposed to be reading confidential documents.
Well,
To
I'm
the
not
public.
reading the whole letter, and there's nothing about this that's worthy of confidentiality.
Well, if it says confidential on it, we shouldn't be reading it.
Expressly
Who
stated.
stamped this confidential?
I was directed to stamp it confidential because I was told from the auditor that it was a confidential document. That the auditor told the director of finance, he then instructed me to stamp it confidential and provided to a confidential document.
Well, usually he always states confidential in his letters. and
Isn't
he
it at the
didn't-
bottom?
No.
I don't have a
It's
copy
right
of
at the
letter
top,
because
though.
it's not-
He didn't say it was confidential, and when I talked to the auditor, he didn't say this was a confidential letter.
The letter I received
There's no comment.
was labeled, was marked clearly confidential, not to be expressly shared with anyone else.
Okay, well, let me put it in my own words.
I would like that point of order, there's a motion and a second on this, we'll call for the vote.
I believe there wasn't an
We
opportunity for
haven't
discussion.
had a chance for discussion yet. I'm still going over a report on the item, which we weren't able to get from staff because we don't have our director of finance with us. So I'm trying to fill in the gaps here, and, you know, you're moving ahead, but we're not ready yet. So please hold your horses. I would like to say that there was a second letter sent from JJA CPA on February 25th. And let me state this in my own words. The gist of it was that our auditor has told the board that the appropriate person to be the district's treasurer is the Harbor District's finance director. However, after having a meeting with our finance director this week, I understand that she's not comfortable in that role, and she is looking for someone else to take on that role. I have been racking my brain trying to figure out who the treasurer should be.
I'm sorry, Commissioner, through the chair.
Yeah.
If I may, I mean, just out of respect, I don't think we could be divulging confidential personnel matters to the public, specifically as it relates to our finance director like that.
Oh, well, that's a good point. I hadn't considered that. Thank you.
And you're talking about personal issues. I'm sorry.
Well, our counsel's sitting here, so if he needs to correct me, he will. But I feel that I want to resolve the problem. It doesn't seem that we have a clear path for doing it, and I'm not sure that spending $3,600 is going to get us there. I have definitely spent some time thinking about this, and the feedback that I've gotten from numerous elected officials, our auditor, and other finance directors is that in such a small special district where we have so few employees, given the nature of the language in the Harbor Navigation Code, the finance director is the appropriate person to be treasurer. I'm not sure that we need to spend $3,600 to get JJA CPA to put that in a document, other than the letters that they've already sent to the board. But I'm open to suggestions, so that's sort of my input there. Commissioner Mateusz, you had something?
Basically, this does compromise our internal control, and we may want to review the internal control action plan to get a better separation of duties.
Do you have anything else?
No.
Did you have anything?
Yeah, I have a question. Do I understand it right that we basically have two options here? We could either approve the engagement with JJA CPA as it is, as it was moved by Commissioner Bernardo, but don't we also have the option, the problem arises from us changing the treasurer being on the commission and this being an external control to making the general manager the treasurer to an internal control. Don't we also have the option to not vote for the engagement, but basically bring it back to the board and see if we can simplify it and just make a commissioner the treasurer again?
Is that a question
Yeah.
for somebody specific?
Yes.
Council?
Anybody who wants to answer? Do we have those two options?
Yeah.
Are those two on the
Several
table, a
options.
complicated one and a simple one?
It sounds, you're looking at me, but it sounds almost like a rhetorical question. I mean, as you indicated, the action before you now that's been moved and seconded is specific to engaging this particular audit. But under the statute, the treasurer serves at the pleasure of the board, and you may at any time designate anyone you wish to be treasurer. But that's not the item that's before you this evening.
So that would be a new agenda item at a later date, if we wanted to revisit that.
Correct.
Okay. Another thing that I wanted to mention is that typically, if you're going to review your processes and you have an auditor who does your annual audit, you find a different auditor because that creates a cleaner process. And I think we learned about that at our leadership training recently, that if you're going to hire an auditor to review your internal processes and make recommendations about things like segregation of duties, that you wouldn't hire the same auditor that you use for your annual audit. You would find an auditor who is neutral or a different auditor. And the other thing I wanted to point out is that our finance director informed me that we were not going to be using JJA CPA going forward, that we were due for a new auditor. So,
Point of clarification, I believe that they're our auditor through the end of fiscal year 2015, and then we would be doing an RFP for
a new auditor.
Yeah.
Okay. So they're going to be phasing out, because that's another thing that's recommended for boards, is that you not continue to use the same auditor on an ongoing basis, that you switch auditors every so many years, because that provides better, it's a better practice. And again, that's the same sort of rationale for why when a board decides to audit internal procedures, finance procedures, controls, processes, that you would use a separate auditor for that. So for that reason alone, I can't vote for this item. I am very happy to have an auditor review this process, but I think we have to use an auditor other than JJA CPA. I think it's a cleaner process if we do it that way. So that's why I'm not going to be able to support the motion as it currently stands. Oh, sorry.
Thank you, thank you. I'll make mine brief. Just 4 points that I want to make with regards to this item. First of all, as someone who works at a public agency, I want to say that having an internal auditor and an external auditor is pretty much standard. The other thing is, following proper government accounting principles for public agencies, it's common to have an external auditor, like JJA CPA. And I want to remind everyone that this item really is about government transparency and improving government transparency. And I believe that this item will, and that's why I'm going to support it. And then, you know, if it means that we use JJACPA for one more, you know, till the end of the fiscal year, which is June 30th,
Yes.
which is just how many months from now, I don't have a problem with this because, quite frankly, what a long name, JJACPA has familiarity with the district, so they understand the processes, they understand how we work. So if we were to hire a new one, we'd have to ramp up, you know, and I just, for the however months we have left, I'm fine with this. And again, this is about transparency, and it's about what's standard for public agencies and government accounting principles. So I'm going to be supporting this. Thank you. That's it.
Does anybody else have any comments?
So JJA is scheduled to terminate 6/30/15 or 6/30/16 under the current?
I would have to look at the, forgive me, but I don't know how it works, but I know that, you know, they will be auditing fiscal year 14-15, and that ends June 30th of 15. So once the books are closed, they will have to audit them. So it could be into the end of 15 and possibly the beginning of.
Audits usually in the summer, typically.
Well, if the books close June 30th, yeah, I guess summer, spring, or summer.
Summertime.
Summer,
Yeah.
fall.
I mean, sometimes it's late. I think it's supposed to be in the summer, but sometimes it's on later.
Yeah.
So I just have one last thing to say on this subject. When I had my meeting with our finance director this week, we spent time online. We looked at almost, I think, every single special district that's a harbor district in California. We went to numerous websites, and we did not find one instance of a single board member acting as treasurer throughout California. And we also did not find many treasurers at all. In fact, what we discovered was that the harbor districts, which are special districts, have apparently decided that they don't need to follow the archaic harbor navigations code in this instance, and they simply don't have a treasurer. So I think when an audit does happen, it will be interesting to see what the other special districts are doing. And when I talked to the president of LAFCO today, we had a little chat about the role as treasurer, and she had some interesting input. She has a lot of experience. Her input was very clear. She said that with a special district as small as this one is, that it seemed to her that it made sense for the finance director to be the treasurer. And when I suggested, well, you know, we could have a member of the public who's a CPA do it, or we could have a board member do it, she didn't seem to think those were good ideas, but she did think that having the treasurer do it was something that was fairly customary. She also talked about how some city councils have an elected role as treasurer, where there's actually an election for the treasurer, and the county does that as well. In San Mateo County, we have an elected treasurer. In Santa Clara County, they have a CFO. They don't have an elected treasurer. And in fact, they're very proud of the fact that they don't have an elected treasurer, because their treasurer has to come with a resume and a lot of fancy finance qualifications in order to get that job. And you know, he is making the investments for their county. So it seems that every agency has a slightly different way of doing it. It's kind of all over the map. And I think what's important is that the harbor district figure out what makes sense for this particular agency, and you know, decide whether we even need someone in that role. I mean, it's kind of ironic that the other harbor districts don't seem to think it's important. So obviously having the segregation of duties clarified, and making sure that we have accountability and transparency is crucial. I'm all in support of that. So that's, we have a roll call.
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner Davis? Aye. Commissioner Matoush?
Aye.
Commissioner Paravano?
Aye.
President Brennan?
No. So next we have item 6, which is,
Through the chair, I'd like to pull item 6.
oh, thank you. Okay, so staff has pulled item 6. So we're gonna go to item 7, discussion and possible action, communications and marketing committee public member appointment.
Through the chair, would it be appropriate to possibly move up item 8 since we have people waiting in the audience?
Sure, that would be fine. Let me move my papers around here. Okay, so let's go to item 8, which is discussion and possible action, Lisa Wise Consulting, contracting invoices. And I believe that it is the Strategic Planning Committee that's going to give this report.
Sure. Commissioner Matoush, would you like me to start, or would you like to introduce it?
Go ahead.
Sure. So at the last meeting, we agreed to place this item on the agenda, which is a discussion on how to move forward with the community sustainability plan. And just to provide the public with information about how this all came about, last year we hired Lisa Wise Consulting to do a comprehensive strategic business plan for the Harbor District. And in January, the board had asked Lisa Wise Consulting to stop the project and only pursue the community sustainability plan. So tonight we're going to have a discussion on how to best do that. And we do have a representative from Lisa Wise Consulting here tonight. We have Mr. Henry Poncherelli. And he is here to answer any questions that anyone has. And also, just for the public's benefit, he has also submitted the City of Morro Bay Fishing Community Sustainability Plan, which is, I don't know how many pages this is, I think like 85 pages or something. And then the City of Monterey Fishing Community Sustainability Plan, which is like 100 pages. And they're also posted on the district's website. So, you know, if commissioners have questions about that as well. But basically the decision that we have to make tonight is how do we make good on our decision to move forward with the community sustainability plan with Lisa Wise. Okay. And Commissioner Matoush, would you like to add anything to what I said? Or
Can I just
Yeah, I think basically the one thing is there was a stop until we hired a new general manager, because what we've had is a degree of work that not everybody agreed was complete enough to pay. And it's the quality of the work, and then when we got from the finance director, the revisions that our finance director said were in error of the work that they performed, then they said, well, we'll add the corrections for an additional sum of money. And I basically had a long conversation with Henry, email correspondence, and said, as a consultant, you perform for the client. You don't charge the client for making corrections to your own report. And now I see that there's some thing that this can be worked out for potentially less than the contracted amount. But basically, a contractor is doing a job for us, and we have to approve the work before we pay it. Now, the previous general manager stopped the work because he wasn't happy, and that's why we didn't pay it. He's not here to discuss what was he wasn't happy with. Now, I guess the thing, the fishing community wants the community sustainability report. We have a problem a little bit with the financial report. We've had this little issue about, well, we don't want to work, we got a stop order, we can't finish our work. Wait a minute, you could have been working on your work and everything could have been finished to our satisfaction before you asked us for more money. So that's just basically where I'm coming from. If everybody had approved the quality of their work, we wouldn't have the issue before us that we have now.
Why don't we, thank you, Commissioner Matoush, why don't we have Mr. Pontarelli kind of walk us through, where we're at right now and sort of some decision points that we have to make tonight.
Point of information, I believe you have a public comment.
Oh,
did you want to read that before you got into the discussion?
Yes, I do. Thank you for reminding me. We have a email here, which is from the Half Moon Bay Seafood Marketing Association. And there's an attached letter, which I think the board has seen, and it is on the back table, if anybody would like to read it. I'll just go ahead and read it. March 18th, 2015. Hello, Commissioners. As you know, on January 7th, 2015, the strategic planning process for the San Mateo County Harbor District was reviewed, and the majority of the project was put on hold. At that time, Half Moon Bay Seafood Marketing Association and the Half Moon Bay Groundfish Marketing Association requested that the community sustainability portion of the plan be moved forward and completed, and the board voted to complete the community sustainability plan. While the remainder of the strategic planning process was taken under consideration. It appears that somehow in the process between the January meeting and now, the CSP got tied up in the overall strategic planning delay, which is what we were hoping to avoid. This document is quite close to being complete, has a remaining budget available, as we mentioned in our public comment on January 7th. This document will be valuable to the commercial fishing industry. Among other things, this report will satisfy conditions of the Magnus thank you, Act for ground fish fleet, and our entire fleet can benefit from the awareness of the document. The awareness this document will bring to our local industry, and it can be used to help us with many future opportunities. With the help of Lisa Wise Consulting, 2 other communities recently presented complete CSPs for the Pacific Fisheries Management Council. This is something Half Moon Bay would like to have engaged the commercial fishing fleet, and the information they gathered and presented in the draft documents was consistent with the concerns of the fishermen. From our perspective, they have done a very good job at taking complex information, presenting it in a fashion that is easy to understand and useful. We are hoping that they will be able to complete their entire strategic planning process, and we are available to engage in the process however it is most useful for us to do so. Meanwhile, we would like to respectively request that the board act at the March 18, 2015 meeting to clear any red tape that is holding up the completion of the community sustainability plan and create a clear path forward for Lisa Wise Consulting, get this report completed for the commercial fishing industry. And I just had a couple of clarifying questions that I wanted to ask before we heard from Henry. So the agenda item is discussion of possible action, contract and invoices. So I'm a little confused. I thought we were going to be talking about the contract with Lisa Wise and the invoices, and it seems like the issue of the community sustainability plan is coming up, which is different from the contract and invoices. So I'd like to keep the discussion specific to the contracted invoices because that's what we have agendized for item 8. And I think that this is a really large planning project, and I certainly didn't come prepared this evening to talk about the sustainability plan because that wasn't on the agenda. So had I known that the community sustainability plan was going to be a topic for discussion, I would have reread it before the meeting, but it wasn't on the agenda. So I just want to make that point clear. And I also want to point out that I really need the input of our general manager on the strategic plan and the money that we've spent to date and the money that we have outstanding, because it is fairly complex. And so I feel like Ideally, this item really should have been agendized for a meeting when our acting general manager could participate. So I feel like we really aren't doing ourselves and the public a service by having this item scheduled for a time when our acting GM is not with us. So just wanted to point that out. With that said, Henry, if you'd like to approach the board, please do.
Yeah, thank you, President Brennan and the board for the opportunity to discuss the project tonight. I think, yeah, our focus is on the contract and from a general perspective, an overall perspective of which a CSP is part. But if I may, we signed this contract in April. To accommodate the new board, we submitted drafts of the background existing condition reports. Those are tasks 4, 5, and 7. We submitted those on the 22nd. We got comments from back from the Harbor District on all 3 of those documents on the 23rd. On the 24th, my staff worked till 8:45 in the evening to get a document back to Harbor District staff on Christmas Eve, and we addressed comments on all 3 of those documents. Now, the strategic business plan is an iterative process. It's from a high-level perspective, it's a 2-step process. There's a background existing conditions, and then there's a strategic business plan itself. The strategic business plan will draw from the background existing conditions and take community input from which findings and recommendations will made. The background, there's the documents that we submitted were 83, 84, and 80% complete. There's over $24,000 remaining to take those drafts forward. They are drafts, and we don't expect them to be 100%. We're willing to discuss making additional changes on them, and there's money available, and we feel that we could even address Deborah Galarza's comments for less than the money that's available. There's about $9,800 left on the CSP. And further, the strategic business plan, task 9, there's $45,000 remaining on that. The capital facility plan, $32,000 remaining, and even on the preparation of the plan, formatting and such, there's $2,600 left. So there's $119,000 remaining on the project. What we submitted to you guys on the 24th is a draft. So I think the fishing community seems satisfied with the CSP and that we could move forward. And we received a stop work order on January 7th from the board, and we were advised, and then we got a written stop work order from the board on January 12th, and we were advised to provide an amendment so we could keep working. On the 16th, we did provide an amendment, and we worked with our attorney for a day and a half, and it was Exhibit C to the memo that was provided to the board on March 9th. So we're available to move forward there, and I'm more than willing and happy to talk to you guys about addressing Deborah's comments. They're really very even-handed comments. In fact, some of the comments that Deborah made, we had already made the changes because she worked on the document before. She didn't see the revised document. So a day and a half?
Because I talked to her today, and one of her chief concerns was that she put in her draft with all of her many notes, and she said you never got back to her with the corrections.
Great. Yeah, cool. Thank you. So January 7th, we got the stop work order. Deborah gave us her comments on January 21st. Technically a stop work order, I don't know what, stop work order to me means stop work. And, but we're willing to move forward if the board would like to lift the stop work order or suspend the stop work order or
is that you've gotten some comments back from the staff on the financial conditions assessment from Deborah Galarza specifically. I don't think anyone else. I think she's been the
Well,
person who provided the comments. But then the board hasn't had a chance to give you comments after seeing the revision based on her comments. So the board still needs a chance to give you comments back and get revisions made.
Yeah, that's all money that's left in this draft process.
And what about the existing infrastructure financialists? I mean, there are just things here that it's not clear to me in all these notes that I've gotten what the approval process, what's happening with the approval process and the dates of when a draft was sent and when, comments were received back and, these percentages of money spent. It's very confusing, and I know you've got some really detailed charts or spreadsheets that you included when you first gave us the proposal, but the board is not privy to where we're at in a legible way with all the various line items that are supposed to be included in the project. And I've looked at that chart, and I would need a very strong magnifying glass to be able to read the, literally, it's so detailed and there's such tiny
Which chart are you referring to?
Well, I'm talking about when you first gave your original proposal to the board with all the numerous line items of all the various tasks that were going to be completed. It was very, very hard to read it because it was dense. I mean, there's just a lot there, and it's included in your report. It's on, I believe it's online. I know I have a copy of it. So when I compare, things like these letters you're sending to that, I can't make any real connection. It's when you produce an estimate for someone and then you track a project, you should be able to look back at the estimate and see where they're at with the project, and it should be clear, and you should be able to see where the money's going and how much left. And I don't feel like we've ever gotten that level of clarity, and it could just be that the board doesn't, or I don't understand how to read your invoices, but it seems very hard for me to make a connection from your invoices back to where the project stands and what's been completed to date and what's left to do. And it is a complex project, so it's not surprising that it's hard to follow, but it's so hard to follow that I literally have no clue. I can't follow any of this. It doesn't make any sense
if I
to me
may.
at all.
All of the invoices that we submitted have a cover letter that describe the work that we conducted in that period. And all of our invoices have the task lined out, the name of the task, percentage of tasks complete, what the budget is, what was billed to date, and what the current billing.
Yeah, but the board
Every
hasn't been
invoice.
provided with all of those
Okay.
invoices.
If I may,
Yeah.
through the chair, they are available in bills and claims. I mean, they are, when you get them in the office in that large stack, they are there.
Right, but we don't all read that.
I think that another major point is I'm hearing about your view of what you're billing, your view of what's been paid, your view of what's owed, the percentage completed. What I'm not hearing anybody say is, has this been approved by the governing board? Has this board approved that section of work? And do they wish to see any more work on this? And that's the part that I'm missing. I'm not hearing where the general manager has looked at this and said, yes, this is done to my satisfaction. I'm not hearing where this board has looked at the document and said, this is completed to our satisfaction. That's the part that I'm missing.
Cool, thank you. So I think up to this point, the general manager was reviewing our work and approving the work, and we provided a draft that was going to go to the board and go through a process. We had 2 presentations budgeted on our project to present our findings to the board. We haven't gotten there yet. But the general manager has approved all of our invoices except for this 1967, which is submitted on December 26th.
So the project was for 280-something thousand.
274 or something.
274, and we've only got about 100,000 left.
You have 119,407
left, and I think part of the disconnect here is that we've spent through basically 2/3 of the project almost, And we still haven't had a presentation to the board explaining what's been done and what's been spent on what. And that's why we're sitting here so confused, because it seems like there needs to be a very clear PowerPoint presentation to the board explaining what work has been done today, what's cost what, and what's left to do, and the board needs to have the work product to give feedback to after the staff has already gone through their approval process with their feedback. So I would imagine that the way I would think it would work is that the work product would be presented to the staff for their edits, and then they would provide it back to the consultant to make changes as needed. And then once it went through that process, then it would come back to the board for an
That's where
approval
we are.
process where the board would then give their edits. And by the time we get through all that, then we have a clue about what's going on with this project. But that presentation's never been made, and I'm just completely confused about where we're at with this project, and I'm very uncomfortable with it. And as much as I would love to see the one part that we were hoping could move forward, and I do take the concerns of the Half Moon Bay Seafood Marketing Association very seriously, and I think this community sustainability plan is going to be very beneficial. I also, as a board member, am looking at this going, but wait a minute, it's the Harbor District that's paying for this. This district's paying for it, the public's paying for it, and we need to make sure that these reports are beneficial to the district and to the public's interests, in addition to being beneficial to the Half Moon Bay Seafood Marketing Association, who is not paying one dime towards any of this work. So, as much as I think their interest is very important, I think that the district's interest is the most important thing here, and we need to make sure that that the district's interests are being served. And I think that maybe it was premature to put this item on the agenda. So that's just my personal opinion. I feel like I need to hear from the staff, and unfortunately, we're not able to do that tonight. We're not getting any staff input, and that's really not good. And maybe we need to approach this differently going forward, in my opinion, such that we have like a presentation, the staff brings the board up to speed on where they're at with it, we understand the financial aspects more clearly, and then we have a clear roadmap for how to complete the project. And we've already discussed the fact that the board doesn't want to move forward with completion until we have the new general manager on board. So obviously there's that delay in process. There are just a lot of moving parts here. So I'm sorry I'm talking too much. Please, somebody else.
Well, if I may, just very briefly, it's the contract has a very clear timeline and budget and scope of work on how the project progresses, and our invoices reflect the work that we produced monthly. And our contact was the general manager. It's clearly, so we relied on the general manager for communication and to direct our work. And
Unfortunately,
so we've done that. We've fulfilled the tenets of our obligation. And we're willing to continue to work with the board and the staff to come to a conclusion. And I'm willing to meet with you guys off-site.
Asked to see what you've produced so far and see if there's generalized acceptance here. We're working towards finding another general manager, but the finance committee just went through 3 months of bills, and one of the bills had a big hold with Peter's initials. Then that was finally cleared. But we just want to see what are we buying? What are we paying for? What does the product look like? Because I can't tell you at this point, since I didn't start at the very beginning.
Right, the project, thanks, Tom. So we provided those draft documents on the 24th of December, and we're at 57% of the project. So you can look at those documents and say we're 57% of the way there, and that's keeping it.
Now I just don't know where to look for those documents.
The documents, they were part of the board package on the January 7th meeting. The draft reports 4, 5, and 7. I mean, they were part of the board package on the January 7th
It probably
meeting.
would have been helpful if the documents had been included in this packet. Just to-
Documents are very large.
Yeah, they are large. Or
He has
maybe-
200 pages, sorry,
maybe the
excuse me.
links to the documents could get, a second set of links could be put on this, this board packet on the website so that it's easy for the board to find. Because not everybody remembers which meeting it was where we talked about this last, if it was January 7th or later in January or whatever. That would be helpful. Are there any other comments? Yeah.
I would like to move this item then to the next agenda, or at least until the, Harbor Master Grindy can talk about this, or someone on staff can also address this as well. Because I don't think at this point that the commissioners do have the information that they need to make a decision tonight.
I'd just like to make a suggestion that it appears that there are some pretty pressing issues that the harbor master is going to need to deal with when he gets back from his vacation in short order. Based on that, I would suggest that we move it to June, because we're going to be canceling a meeting most likely in May, and there's a lot happening. So in order to do the kind of PowerPoint presentation and assessment of invoices versus work product and edits or whatever we need, I almost feel like we need a workshop on this. Like a strategic plan workshop, so that we're all up to speed. We've got new board members, everybody kind of needs to get on the same page. But to ask the general manager to deal with that in advance of, let's say May 31st, I think is going to be asking a lot. Do you have any thoughts about that?
No, I just, I feel the urgency from the fishing community, and also I remember the vote by the board to move forward with the community sustainability plan. So if it means that we move forward with the CSP in June, I'm okay with that slight delay, because yes, we are in the process of trying to get a new general manager. I understand that that's urgent. I really hear that loud and clear. But I want us not to forget about the CSP, because it was a board vote and because the fishing community has asked for it.
Yeah.
So I just don't want us to forget about it, that's all.
So maybe we could decide to do it, to revisit this in June, early June, or sooner if possible. Does that sound reasonable?
Fine with that. The fellow commissioners, what about the others?
That was my concern too, that actually on January 7th, the board voted to, go forward with the stop work order, but to continue work on the completion of task 7, the community sustainability plan. So I am concerned that we're holding this up, which is a, important document. And I would like to, make a decision on that soon, if not tonight, then as soon as possible. And I just have a quick question for Henry. In your Exhibit C, you point out on the first page under invoices, you mentioned invoices 1967 and 1965, but then in the memo, it's only 1967 for 42,000. Is that the only one that's
Outstanding estimate.
So 1965 is not an outstanding invoice?
No, it was. I thanked Scott when we got paid. I sent him an email. We got paid, and
I think it goes back, before we can pay for the community sustainability plan, we should review it and make sure that everyone's in acceptance that this is what we want.
We haven't had a presentation to the board on the plan, and without having a presentation to the board, how are we supposed to give input on any changes we want to make to the plan? So I mean, there's gotta be a progression of work that's happening where the board gets to give input. And I don't know if the fishing community plans to also give input, but I'm not sure what the process for their edits is, if that's already happened or.
Yes.
That already
We've been
happened.
working very closely with the fishing community
Okay.
on the phone, in person, emails.
So maybe at the next board meeting where we take this up, maybe that could include the presentation on that plan so that then the board could give their feedback if we see anything we want to have included additionally or edited, that there would be then the process for doing that. I just want to make it really clear that, the fishing community has their interests, which are very, very important, especially with this particular plan. But it's the district that's paying for the plan, and the district needs to have an opportunity to weigh in on and give input and make edits if needed. If not, then,
Okay.
we can just approve it. But we gotta look at it first.
There's $119,000 left for us to move forward. We have the background, we gave you drafts of the background and conditions, background existing conditions, and the plan is, there's 2 meetings with the Harbor Commission, $2,400 each in our budget. We've got, like I said, almost $120,000 to move forward and to continue to get input from the community and to get input from the board.
On just the fishing part.
No, on the entire plan. There's $9,800 left on the community sustainability plan.
98. Okay, because I guess what I'm worried about is we're so far from moving forward with the other 2 plans, the existing infrastructure facility assessment and the financial conditions assessment, although the infrastructure facilities assessment is mainly just the Moffitt-Nichols studies, right? Moffitt-Nichols reports?
Moffitt-Nichols was one of the principal author on that, yes.
Okay, so we still haven't gotten a report. The board, I've requested that it be on a future agenda, but the board, just so you know, because you probably aren't aware of this, the board still has not gotten a report, a PowerPoint presentation and a report from our staff on the Moffitt-Nichols
Well, that's a separate,
infrastructure.
that's not our,
Yeah, but we can't, until we do that, we can't look at this.
Certainly you
task
can.
four, because that's we can't do it with any knowledge, but, we've got to look at the content of the Moffitt-Nichols studies before we can really digest this.
Moffitt-Nichols did this work in our report.
Whether it's included in here or separate, it's the same information. I'm saying we've got to look at it, and we haven't done it. We have
we're
not, as a board, looked at it, period, ever.
Okay.
So that needs to happen.
It was in the board package on the 7th.
Including something in the board packet is really different than actually having a presentation to the board where the public gets to understand it, the board gets to understand it and ask questions, and we have the knowledge, the people available who are the experts who can answer questions, and we're able to give feedback and make edits. That process hasn't happened. That's not acceptable.
It's
That
not, we
process-
haven't charged you for it yet. It's
Okay,
not
good.
part of the process
Good,
yet.
Good, but I'm just saying, I want to make sure that we aren't using up all the money on one thing when we still have these other things to do. And so that's something that we need help with the general manager on, to make sure that we're balancing the amount of money left in the budget on this project so that we're able to complete it successfully. Because if we burn through all the money on one thing, we won't have any money left for the other things. I'm just saying,
We're not,
that's important. That's important.
But we have very specific tasks and budgets associated with those, and we've been billing, if you follow our invoices, we describe what we do, we only bill for the work that we do, and we are moving forward. So all we're asking is to be paid for what we've done and to continue to keep the dialogue open. We've provided background existing conditions. It's draft, it's 80% draft. There's $24,000 left to move forward just on those documents. And that's,
When is the response to Deborah Galarz's edits to the financial conditions assessment going to be provided? Has that been sent to her?
You stopped work on the project on January 7th. We got edits from Deborah on January 21st.
I'm sorry, but today she said that you guys were going to be responding back.
I told her that we would work closely with her as soon as we got resolved this issue with you guys. We have a very close relationship with her. She's worked really hard with us. We told her that we'd move forward on it as soon as we got resolution with the board. I can't work on this project until you guys lift the stop work order. You told me to stop working.
A suggestion. Since it could still take about 5 months or so before we get a permanent general manager on board, and I think it's very important that Task 4 and Task 5, the general manager is part of the presentations and input and feedback and all of that. I really don't want to hold up Task 7 for that long. So within those $9,835 that are available in that task, do you think, I know you weren't planning on taking every single task and do a presentation on it, but would it be possible, since we are in the situation that we want to move one task forward, and we have voted as a board to move that task forward, that we could maybe do a short workshop on just on this document, just on the sustainability plan for like an hour, and half an hour presentation, half an hour feedback from the board and the public on what else they want to spend the rest of the money on. Like if you could organize the workshop with portion of the money and then there's some of the comments you get with the rest of it, so we completely finish that task and close it out and still hold off on the other tasks where, you know, we really need to have a permanent general manager.
I'd be happy to work with the district on this. We want to get this done. We feel like we shaken hands with the district. We feel like we've shaken hands with shook hands with the fishing community, excuse me. Yeah, I would want to sit down and describe what the task associated with that workshop. We're perfectly capable of doing that. We could probably put something together pretty quickly.
That sounds like a good solution to me. I don't know if...
I like that idea, and I have a question that kind of goes back in time. Henry, can you refresh my memory? Did we build into the budget when we first did this? I don't remember how we would communicate to the board, like in terms of quarterly progress reports, updates. Did we build anything like that into the? Yeah,
there was. Generally, our communication was to go through the general manager, and the general manager was going to provide staff reports to the board to keep you guys updated. We had 2 presentations to the board. They were after the background existing conditions phase, when we could show you guys what we had gathered in terms of background and existing conditions, and then there was going to be the draft plan, and then there was a third presentation where we had the final plan.
Okay, so 3. There were 3 built into the.
Yeah, we'd have to. I'll confirm that, but there's at least 3.
Okay, because I think that's where the angst and concern that you're hearing here is the commissioners don't feel like we've been brought along on the process and given sort of check-ins and stuff. I think that's what it is. I think that's what the sentiment, if I can kind of channel everyone's
Thank
energy.
you, Alan. Thank you.
So again, to tether to what Commissioner David said, I think it's a great idea to do some sort of check-in update of where we're at and what does it look like right now and the path forward. I think that I'm totally in support of that idea.
Just on task 7.
Just on task 7, yes.
Yeah.
Just on CSP.
Yeah, we'll have to, we'll sit down and put together what task we think would be associated with moving that forward, how much time we think it's going to take, and what will entail from the board, and what it'll entail from our team, and we could put something like that together very quickly.
How we can work it out within the budget that is remaining. And
make it clear
No problem.
how much that's going to cost.
Yeah, we've done that from the start. We've done that from the start.
But the board hasn't received that communication.
Well, okay.
So, do we need a motion here? Close this?
You're welcome to make a motion. I mean, it sounds like
I
from
would
this
have to
conversation, Henry is gonna, I'm not sure whether you want to formally ask him to provide a proposal, or?
I think we have to wait to hear back from Henry about what his proposal is gonna be.
We could direct, I think a motion could direct that to happen, and I think the motion has to include a component that withdraws the stop order.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the first thing off the bat. It's gotta be considered.
Well, that's what I would disagree, that it was started and it was not done to the satisfaction of the board, so therefore, it's not complete.
I take issue with that. There were information that was given to the commissioners in their board packet that it illustrated every invoice, every up-to-date work that was done by Lisa Weiss Consulting.
If someone
And then
has a motion.
Right after that, there was a stop order that was done by the commission. And out of respect for Mr. Continental, he is here on his own. There is a stop work order for his contract. He is here on his own.
If there's a motion, if someone would like to make a motion, please make it. Hearing no motion, I'm gonna go to the next agenda item. And we're going back to, what was it?
Oh,
Item
thank you.
7.
That's it?
Looking at that. So, thank you, Henry.
You're welcome, thank you.
Discussion of possible action, communications and marketing committee, public member appointment. So, since this is my item, I'll explain. Item 7 in the board packet, you'll see a copy of the standing committee bylaws that the board approved previously. If you flip over to the second side, you will see a little bio of Jim Anderson. And I think everybody on the board is familiar with Jim Anderson, but I'm going to read it for the public. When he was only 5 years old, Jim Anderson had to stand on an apple crate to see where he was headed when he took the helm of the CPFV Miss Princeton. Nevertheless, despite his young age, the passengers on his father's charter vessel were assured of safe voyage. Fishing was the only thing of interest to young Jim, and each morning he was up before dawn, ready to go. He spent the better part of his early life at sea and fondly recalls nap times spent cozily lounging in the galley sink. Trying to imagine that. Ultimately, however, his mother prevailed, the boat was sold, and all arguments about going fishing versus attending school came to an end. However, at the age of 17, Jim bought his first commercial fishing boat, the FV Dawn, a 34-foot wooden double-ender built for the Columbia River, and took off in pursuit of salmon. After a few years of fishing, Jimmy Dawn, as he was by then known, he took time off to build a winery for his mother, who was terminally ill. In the late 1980s, Captain Anderson purchased the FV Adeline, an unfinished 50-foot steel vessel from Martin Allen's boatyard in Moss Landing. After adding steering, a shaft and rudder, he brought it home to Pillar Point for fishing. Today, Jim fishes the Adeline for Dungeness crab and California king salmon. Jim is extremely active, advocating for his industry, serving not only the board of directors for the Half Moon Bay Seafood Marketing Association, but also for the California Salmon Council and the Dungeness Crab Task Force, as well as promoting sales direct from fishermen in Pillar Point Harbor. When asked if his advocacy was his way of helping to ensure the ocean resources, when asked if his advocacy was his way of helping to ensure the ocean resources were adequately protected, he replied, "No, we've always understood sustainability. I'm trying to help the fleet and folks I've grown up with to deal with the bureaucracy." This item is about appointing a member to the Communications and Marketing Committee. Currently, Commissioner Bernardo and Commissioner Brennan are the board members on the committee. And per our bylaws, each board member is allowed to recommend up to 2 public members to be appointed to a standing committee. Mr. Anderson, if approved, would be the first public member to ever be appointed to a Herbert District Standing Committee. And my hope is that I can get the board's support tonight because our bylaws require that the board must approve a recommendation for a public member to become a committee member of a standing committee. So I hope that's clear, and if anybody has any questions, please let me know. Yes?
Just have a question. Typically, when boards, and I'm thinking, also city councils select, say, planning commissioners or park and rec commissioners, there's like a process, like an application, or it's like a transparent, open process. For our standing committees, are we just going to appoint folks? I guess my question is more of a process question. Is it by, how is that going to work? Is it just?
It sounds like a question for our council.
Because it's not, the reason why I ask it is because it's not addressed here.
The only process in your bylaws is that a member of the public who's asked to serve must receive the approval of the board. I don't have any answer for you regarding the
So
process.
it's up to the board to decide.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I have a question regarding the process. Once a member becomes part of the committee, they also become member of the legislative body, is my understanding. Is that?
So he becomes a member of the legislative body of that committee, or put another way, the Brown Act defines a legislative body to include a standing committee such as this one. So he would become a member of the legislative body that is the Communications and Marketing Committee. He does not become a member of the Board of Harbor Commissioners.
So regardless of these bylaws, there still is a process that has to be done by a public member becoming part of the legislative body in terms of filling out the form, in terms of any types of background checks, in terms of any types of disclosures. Form 700.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure I know what you mean by background checks. I don't know that there's any legal requirement that members of boards undergo background checks, if you're talking about criminal background checks. But it is true. I think I understand your question, so I'll try and address what.
Yeah, I'm talking as at large. This is
like, so I think the inquiry has to do with, on a case-by-case basis, on the facts based on what a particular legislative body does. I must confess, especially since your standing committees are new, I don't have a very clear understanding of what your Communications and Marketing Committee does. But members of that committee, to the extent that they engage in activities that present issues regarding conflicts of interest, regarding participating in making decisions, acting like public officials, whether a member of a committee is a member of the board or a member of the public is irrelevant in that determination. It may well be that serving on as a member of the Marketing Communications Committee will impose no further obligations on a member of the public. It could be that there's no further obligations until a year from now when the Marketing Committee talks about awarding a contract for website development services to firm X, and suddenly there's a question of whether there's a conflict with a member of that committee. It's impossible for me to tell you today sort of a black and white rule, but any member of a committee is subject to the same panoply of rules that applies to every other member of a committee. Does that answer your
It
question?
does, no, I'm just asking just to protect the district. I mean, I'm in favor of this, and I've known Mr. Anderson for a very long time, and I respect the work that he's done. It's just, if there's something there that all of a sudden, this is the first time that we are doing this, that we have to be cautious and accountable in our actions of what we're doing. We'll reach out to members of the public, which I would welcome this, but in terms of actually, all of a sudden, you know, the applicant might want to, you know, be advised that these are the things that he or she are going to be stepping into, becoming part of a legislative body. If there's like a
point. And I think perhaps it would be helpful to have a clear statement of the scope of the committee, and then someone sit down with Mr. Andrews, should you decide to appoint him to the committee, and assess what forms of disclosures may or may not be required.
So just a point of clarification, just a reminder that our standing committees are purely advisory, and they can't make any decisions on behalf of the district. All they can do is produce reports and make recommendations to the board for consideration, but ultimately the decision-making is up to the board. The committees are limited in their ability to do anything. I mean, they just simply can't do anything other than advise the board. That's it.
So in my view, while I appreciate that, the way the law describes participating in the making of a decision is pretty broad and would include discussions of an advisory nature that lead to some ultimate vote by a deciding board. So that may or may not be relevant. Again, I think it's impossible to answer this question globally. It requires an understanding of particular scope of duties and a particular individual.
So you're saying you kind of need to address specific issues as they come up, like if something XYZ happened and there was a concern by someone on the board about it, that this happened or this was being recommended by the committee and they were concerned about an ethics concern or whatnot, and then it would be addressed in real time, or like, I'm just trying to get clear on what it is you're saying.
I'm responding to Commissioner Parvano's concern for the district, and I guess I would always think it's a good idea to get out ahead of these types of issues rather than wait till they come up. And so I guess my suggestion had been to, should you appoint him to this committee, to, and I don't know if it's me that you would want to do that or someone else, that's really up to you, but to get a clear understanding of what the scope of the committee's work is and how that would affect him and what the results of that would be.
And how would you, just for clarification, how exactly would you want to see that happen? So we want a clear roadmap here on what we should do.
I think I would have to give that a little bit of thought. I would hate to give you a clear roadmap that turns out not to be so clear. So I'm happy to think about that a little bit.
So then is that something that we could get back to at a future meeting where you could clear up? Like, I know with, say, new board members, when we had 2 new board members recently, you did a meeting where you discussed the Brown Act with the new board members, which is a typical introductory to being a new board member. Are you thinking in terms?
It could be something like that. It could be as something as simple as just working with the general manager to get clarity on the facts on the ground for the work of this particular committee and the assessment of the issues that are raised by that.
Or maybe, I'm just thinking out loud here, maybe there could be like a little document that could be provided, you know, to the committee, like some recommendations or
Sure.
something. And that could be posted on the website.
That sounds like that would be okay too.
I'm sorry, through the chair, just one more question that just came to mind. What is the term of this appointee? Is it like a year? Is it 2 years, 4 years? Is
Well,
it?
I have that question too, and I don't know the answer to that question, because that is not covered in our bylaws. So I'm not sure how to answer that question. Do you have any suggestions about how we could resolve that?
I think you can determine his term.
I would think that once I believe that in here it's included that the ways that someone can be removed from a committee, but I would think that when the board member who made the recommendation for the committee member was no longer on the committee, that their recommended member would also no longer be on the committee. Therefore, the new board member that replaced that board member would then be able to select their own public member if they so choose, or chose.
So I'm sorry, so that raises a whole nother thing. So can only members of a particular committee make recommendations of members of that committee? In other words, can I recommend, I can't recommend anyone, say, to the finance?
It says here that you can only make recommendations to the committee that you're, for public members for the committee that you serve on.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Yeah.
So I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay. Go ahead.
I move to appoint Jimmy Don Anderson to the Communications and Marketing Committee as a member of the public for 1 year.
From today's date?
Sure.
Okay. Any amendments or second?
Second.
Okay. Roll call?
Just a second. Would the maker of the motion approve an amendment that would say that an application has to be filled out by the member of the public to become a member of an advisory committee?
Have we looked at the Brown Act implications of this as well? Say that there's 3 of us in the harbor talking, now all of a sudden we can't talk about the committee things?
What do you mean?
We'll say you have, you 2 are together with Jim, then all of a sudden you can't talk about it.
There's always Brown Act considerations, no matter what you do for the board.
But Commissioner Mateusz, you are correct that I believe, is it Commissioner Bernardo and Brennan that are on this committee? If the 2 of you were to meet with Mr. Anderson, that would be a meeting of this standing committee. And had it were not properly noticed, that would be a problem. In fact, if one of you were to meet with Mr. Anderson without properly noticing it as a committee, that would be, a majority of a quorum of that committee. So for sure, the Brown Act applies just like it applies to any other committee or any other legislative body.
So rather than being appointed as a member, that problem is alleviated. A member of the committee versus being appointed to the committee.
Well, the Brown
Or
Act
an
isn't,
attendee.
the Brown Act isn't a
Just-
problem.
Just an attendee, yeah.
It's just, we have to, adhere to the Brown Act in this situation, just like we do in all the others. So what Stephen Miller just said made sense to me. Maybe you could explain it one more time.
Well, if I think I understand what you said at the very end is there's a difference between Mr. Anderson attending a meeting as a member of the public and him attending a meeting as a member of the committee.
Correct.
Those are 2 very different things.
Yes.
That's what I think I heard you say, and I agree with that statement.
So the Brown Act would apply.
All he is appointed.
As a member, he would need to observe the Brown Act.
Right. But not as an attendee, a member of the public.
Then he wouldn't be a member of the committee, so he wouldn't need to observe the Brown
Correct.
Act. Any other questions? Do we answer the, or we can move
motion, I would like to leave that up to each chair, because they can handle that differently, right? Since it's not in the bylaws, like each chair can have their own selection process for the members they want to appoint. So
I think it's a matter of transparency.
How do we keep track of that? Who comes up with the application? There should be a flat-out process, and every committee follows it. That's my feeling.
Yeah.
It's too confusing. I'm lost at how I would try to follow what every committee's doing, who's appointed, who has an application, who doesn't. Did you do the application? Did you do the application? It just seems like that is very confusing, and I think that you as need to review your bylaws and incorporate that. There should be a process, and it should be fair to the members of the public to apply. I think Marietta Harris had stated that there was a process in the past. It just seems really confusing.
Just to clarify, when the Board of Supervisors appoints members to a commission or a committee, let's just say a commission, it's the supervisor making the decision. So, you know, I'm just saying that there are different ways of
Sure, there's lots of different ways
of
but
doing
we
it.
need to hone in and figure out what would work best for our district and the process.
Right now, we have these bylaws, and tonight we're not revising them because that's not our agenda, but we could, at a future date, you know, as when we decided on the bylaws, everybody had an opportunity to chime in with their input on the bylaws, and we left it to decide at a future time if we needed to make revisions to the bylaws. There's always an opportunity to revise the bylaws going forward, but that's not on the agenda tonight.
You're right, it's not. I'm just giving you my input because I just seem like I would be the one that has to help follow everything, and I'm very confused.
So
I was
what?
just commenting on.
And I appreciate your input because it's important, but what might be helpful is if you, maybe you want to write a memo to the board and explain to us what you'd like to see happen, so that then when we agendize it, we know how to best address your concerns. That way we get the right agenda item on and we know what we're supposed to be addressing.
Mr. Merlin.
I have a question through the
Yeah.
chair. Can the committee ask for public comment on certain actions? Without him being on the committee, can the committee say, Mr. Anderson, we'd like you to sit in on this meeting, we'd like any of your input without him being on the committee? Is that?
Anybody can attend the meetings.
Okay,
They're open to the public.
then my question is, why do we have to appoint to that if you can still get his input?
The reason that I wanted to do this is because at our last attempt at having a committee meeting, I know you weren't here for that meeting, but when this came up, and I wasn't planning to bring this up tonight, but the last time we called a committee meeting for the Communications and Marketing Committee, there are two board members who sit on that committee, myself and Commissioner Bernardo. And Commissioner Bernardo was ill that day, and he emailed me an hour and a half before the committee meeting when I was already on my way to, the meeting, and it was too late for me to find out and cancel the meeting. So we held a meeting hoping that he was going to show up, but he couldn't make it because he was sick. And so we held a meeting, and then we found out, thanks to Commissioner Paravano, that our meeting didn't count because we didn't have a quorum, because we didn't have two board members at the meeting. So the point of having a public member is so that we can make a quorum. So it's sort of like having an alternate.
Sure.
If I can't show up, then Mr. Anderson could show up, on my behalf. It doesn't mean that he can't come when I'm there. He can come when I'm there too. But that way, if, say, Commissioner Bernardo has a lot of work responsibilities coming up, and he knows he's not going to be able to make committee meetings for the next couple months, he might choose to select or recommend to the board a public member who could then essentially be his alternate, more or less. And that way, if he's not there, he doesn't have to worry about the quorum issue. If Jimmy's out fishing, we know we're going to have two people there, so that our meeting will be an official meeting, and our report from our meeting will make it onto the district's website, and then hopefully be useful to the board at a future date if they decide to, you know, to use the report. So I
Thank
hope
you.
that explains.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much.
It's just a technical
Sure.
thing, and Mr. Anderson was kind enough to volunteer. And I'm wondering what he thinks right now. But I really appreciate him volunteering and showing up tonight. So are there any other comments or questions?
I have an amendment.
Oh, which was? I've forgotten.
To include an application process.
Well, you know, it's your motion.
And I will include it in the motion. Do I have to rephrase the motion then? Or can we just
I mean, it doesn't.
tag it on to the end?
It just seems kind of silly because what's in the application?
Where's the application come from?
We don't have an
Well,
application.
I'm sure there are templates out there that we can get to you.
But would that need to be approved by the board members?
I think it'd be cleaner to leave that out, frankly,
I
and
think the
deal with
public
it
has a
later.
right to know who is applying for
Yeah,
being a member of a committee.
Well, the public knows because we just talked about it, and this is a public meeting, and it's being televised, and everybody knows at this point, there's no secrets here, you know.
Well, a bio about him doesn't give me any qualifications though on what he knows about communications and marketing, just myself as a member of the public reading it. I mean, I understand the application process, but I need to know where's this application come from.
Really?
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, but this is like kind of bordering on getting ridiculous, so.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So
Just trying to get clarification.
I included it in the motion. I will volunteer to find a template, a relatively simple application template, and maybe we can include that in Debbie, if you're working on a memo to get that to the board, maybe we can include it in there and make that part of the process. I'll find it, I'll find something and send it to you, and then you can get it approved by the board.
So if you'd be so good as to restate your motion to see if we get a second before.
All right, my motion was to appoint Jimmy Anderson to the Communications and Marketing Committee as a public member, as a committee member for 1 year. How do I phrase that? And to provide an application
Template.
Right. Well, I'll provide the template, and then he would have to, with the appointment, he would have to fill out that application. Does that work?
Second.
Can we get a roll call, please?
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner David?
Aye.
Commissioner Matoush?
Aye.
Commissioner Carvana?
Aye.
President Brennan?
Aye. Thank you very much. Okay. Let's see where we are. So we are now at item 9, which is the California Special District Association call for nomination CA. Did you want to give this report, Betty?
You have the item before you. I'll take any questions. This is just a nomination form. You can nominate who you like, and then I believe in nominations, the deadline is May 22nd, and then in June you get a ballot where you can vote for a nominee.
Okay. Any comments or questions? All right, hearing none, we'll go to, oh, yeah.
Sorry about that. Through the chair. Have we received, typically when these come along, they're accompanied by members of the public who send us, requests,
Like their bio.
like their bios
Yeah.
because they would like us to consider them for this. Have we received any?
I have not seen it.
Any others? Nope. So we will move on to item 10, which is acting general manager compensation, and we have a report from legal counsel, Mr. Miller.
So, thank you. You do have a report from me, although I really can't take credit for it because it's really the work of Marietta Harris before she left the district, and so I'm presenting it in her place. I think it's pretty self-explanatory, and if you have any questions, I will need to read through it.
Could you just, explain what compensation, like, if we backtrack to January, and is there an amount of money in here somewhere? That's what
I believe that the amount of money, it should be interesting. It's not, I think it's possible that there's a page missing from the report in your packet that maybe wasn't included. So I don't know the amount of money off the top of my head.
I think we just need the date that he started. We could calculate that.
The memo as drafted shows the amount of money starting the date drafted, and it's for reasons I can't explain, it's not in the staff report.
Do we need to make the motion to approve this, do we need to reference that amount of money, or how can we do this officially?
Do we need a motion to give the acting commissioner the general manager's salary from the date he began those duties solely as the acting general manager?
The recommendation at the top of the staff report could be a perfectly valid motion.
Okay, I move to adjust compensation for the acting general manager commencing upon January 1st, 2015, and for so long as he is assigned the role of general manager in recognition of the district's personal rule 4.04.
Second.
Any comments or questions? Okay, hearing none, can we get a roll call?
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner Davis?
Aye.
Commissioner Mathush?
Aye.
Commissioner Carrabba? President Bennett?
Aye. Now we have item 11, bills and claims in the amount of $112,822.90. And who's going to give this report? I'm wondering.
I can take any questions that you have. Actually, the director of finance.
Any questions?
Yes. The Finance Committee approved 3 months worth of, or reviewed 3 months worth of bills, claims, and payments. One of the things that came up are a couple of memberships. The Society for Human Resource Managers and something called the IPMA. The district paid for these memberships. Does the membership stay with the district, and if so, how does the district access the benefits? I noticed some of the shipping addresses were not harbor addresses.
I would have to look, they're not on the current bills and claims, this is the reviewing.
It's the 90 days we reviewed prior.
That was the two
IPMA and SHRM.
RMA. I will look into that. I believe the memberships stay with the district.
I want to make a clarification. The Finance Committee has never held a meeting, and when the Finance Committee does hold a meeting, the meeting will be publicly noticed. The Finance Committee is a standing committee and has to be publicly noticed. What did happen was Commissioner Brennan and Commissioner Mathush met with the Finance Director, Deborah Galarza, and reviewed 3 months of bills. So just wanted to make that clarification.
I would like to make a motion that we approve the bills and claims for the period ending March 18, 2015, in the amount of $112,822.90.
I think you have a speaker card on this one before you make your motion.
You are correct. Thank you very much. I'm going to call Brian Rogers.
All right, I hated to interrupt you, but it seemed like it was appropriate at that point.
Thank you.
Yeah, because I looked over this one, and having attended several of the meetings lately, I noticed that there was an awful large check going out to a BHI Management, which, as I understand it, is Brent Ives' company. And, you know, from the public standpoint, what's gone on in the past is that a commissioner pushed to get Mr. Ives' company brought in for the group facilitator. Even after the respondents to the RFP, there was some question as to whether he even responded to the RFP, but somehow he ended up with that contract. After the election, that contract seemed like kind of a moot point. The board was now speaking to each other. But instead of canceling that contract, the same commissioner pushed them through without adhering to the board's own policies, which any contract over a certain dollar amount needs an RFP. They failed to do that. They just simply put him in for being the headhunter for $39,000 more. And I don't remember what the original contract for being the facilitator was, but I believe it was in excess of $25,000. So now he's been pushed through for nearly, what, $65,000 worth of contracts. Then I find out that he's being paid along the way for his headhunter position, which, having worked in corporate America, headhunters, we used to use them all the time. The way we paid them was pretty standard. You hire them to find you somebody. When you hire one of their candidates, you pay them 2/3 of their bill. And if that candidate sticks around for a negotiated time frame, usually 45 to 90 days, you pay them the final part of their contract. You don't pay them as they go. They haven't produced anything at that point. That just seems out of line completely for what's going on here. So, you know, then part of his duties as a headhunter is to bring in reasonable candidates for the position. And then I find out that the commissioner who pushed him into this position has contacted the theoretical candidate and convinced them to withdraw. So essentially, what we have is a commissioner pushing, I don't know if it's a friend of theirs, into these contracts and then, you know, preventing them from even accomplishing anything. Yet he's getting paid anyways. So we're basically paying this guy $65,000+ to do nothing. I mean, he's performed a couple of interviews and he's in theory tried to find somebody, but that's, you know, not getting anywhere. So we have one guy who's now capitalizing on a friendship, and that just doesn't seem right. And yet we're paying him on this particular claim over $7,000.
Thank you.
This isn't right.
Your time is up. Thank you.
Really? You let people who contribute to your campaign speak as long as they want, but you're going to cut me off?
Thank you.
Literally?
Thank you.
Great.
Okay, did we have any other,
I made a motion.
all right,
I'll second the motion.
roll call?
Commissioner Zerba?
Aye.
Commissioner Davis?
Aye.
Commissioner Mathush?
Aye.
Commissioner Carabana?
Aye.
President Brennan?
Aye. Next, we have item 12, which is,
Well, unless you got some GM questions, there's nothing further than the written report that's submitted.
does anybody have any questions?
No.
All right. Thank you.
Good report, you're learning well.
You know, I don't know.
It only took 30 years.
Short is good.
Next, we have item 13, it says 13 and 14. Let's see what's going on with this.
They're combined, because we don't have to take care of.
Oh, okay. 13, 14, which is the Director of Finance and Human Resources Manager, neither of which are here. Ms. Nixon, would you like to give this report? You have the report, I'll take the report, please. Okay. Well, I would like to mention that in my meeting with the Finance Director, Deborah Galarza, she informed me that our IT consultant has been working on a proposal which she thinks is going to be prepared and ready for the board by the April 1st meeting. And it's my understanding that the IT consultant will actually come and present the presentation, or the proposal rather, to the board on April 1st. So I believe that that will include installation of servers, Wi-Fi. There'll be a number of different topics that'll be covered in the proposal. So just wanted to mention that that's coming up. Oh, and then also I noticed that LAFCO's mentioned on here. And I did attend the LAFCO commission meeting today, which was held at 2:30. And I'm going to pass on that Martha said she wouldn't be able to attend tonight, but she is looking forward to giving a presentation on the coast side. I believe she's coming to the April 1st meeting as well. So yeah, April 1st. So she'll be there to speak to the board. That's all I have. Anything else? Okay. We've got item 15, which...
You have a report. You have some questions.
Any questions? I had a question. I wondered if, I know we've gotten acting general manager Brandy's input on this in the past, but having served at Oyster Point for so long, I wondered if you had any parting words for us on things that you think the board could do to increase occupancy or just in general make that site more successful or better serving to the public?
Not in this format here. It would have to be in a possible letter of recommendation memo.
A memo? Okay.
Yeah, that would be the best.
Okay, where you have more time?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry to put you on the spot.
It would just be randomly. Talking Friday morning.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
In the future, Mr. Merlo, he'll provide you with all that information.
Okay, all right, you're off the hook.
That I am.
Yeah. Anybody else? Nope, okay. Next we have item 16, so that would be acting harbor master boundary.
All right, well, you have my report. I have 3 things to add to my report that came up. So the first one is the sailing vessel Can-Do, which was sunk on Sea Dock, has been lifted and removed from the harbor. They were working today on the sailing vessel Brute. Don't know if they floated that up. I believe it was floated. They were going to put it at the dock tonight and then put it at the beach at high tide for removal. The last thing is next Wednesday, March 25th, is Tsunami Day along the entire West Coast, from Washington down to the Mexican border. The CEC, which is the Coastside Emergency Corps, is going to be holding a training exercise that day, which is all the agencies on the coast, as well as volunteers, ham radio operators, and we'll be a part of that. That is from 9 till noon, and it's called the Maiden Voyage, is the tsunami drill. In April, there's what they call the Silver Dragon, and I'll put that on my next report, but that's with the health department, and they're going to do a disaster on the whole coast side of a massive power outage, and they'll be going door to door, checking for people that need maybe power for medical equipment for their health and everything. But as we are part of the CEC, we'll be involved in that also.
Thank you for that. Do you you have any update on the yellow submarine?
The Yellow Submarine, it spent the whole night out yesterday, came back this morning. They were recharging it, and they will be going again back out. I was not able to ask them how their first 2-day trip went, but they've had a couple issues. First one was software, second one was a battery issue, and
Crab pot.
yeah, crab pot. The submarine hooked a crab pot. They tried raising the crab pot. They brought the inflatable alongside and popped their inflatable. So they've had a few little setbacks, but it seems to be they've gotten all the kinks worked out, so they should be moving forward from now on.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other questions? So next, we have item 17A, which is committee reports, and I see we have a report provided to us by Commissioner David, so maybe we should start with that.
Yeah, it's by both of us, Commissioner Mateo and myself, for the Water Quality and Public Safety Committee meeting. We met the second time on March 12th in Half Moon Bay, and it was part of our committee, so they gave a presentation to the group on their preliminary results. So basically run through the presentation that I think they're going to give it to the board on April 15th. They're on the agenda for the day. And we had a lively discussion on how these results can guide management decisions and actions for the Harbor District, and how we could develop management questions to guide that process. And then we're continuing to work with historic fecal indicator bacteria data that has been collected by the County of San Mateo. And we've started plotting them and looking at inconsistencies and trying to address those so we can have a good assessment and evaluation of the data and possible correlations that give us insight of the potential sources for the bacteria. It's a great group. I love working with those guys. They're really enthusiastic and spend a lot of time outside the meetings trying to help out. And an announcement that I want to make is because of Commissioner Matush's travel schedule, we have to cancel the next Water Quality and Public Safety Committee meeting on April 9th. So the next meeting will be the May meeting that will be held on Thursday, May 14th at 7 o'clock at BRC.
Okay, and that information about that will be on the district's website?
I think Debbie put the report up there.
The report, yes.
What about the meeting schedule? Are we doing
Can I
that?
put the agenda closer to?
To the May meeting, we'll post an agenda, yeah.
Okay. Does anyone have any other committee reports? Okay. So I just wanted to mention briefly that the Finance Committee has not yet met. However, I think a meeting is imminent, and depending on Commissioner Matush's schedule, potentially next week. The date for that would be included in the agenda, which would be published on the district's website. Also, after Commissioner Brennan and Commissioner Bernardo have an opportunity to figure out schedule, hopefully there'll be another opportunity for a communications and marketing committee meeting upcoming, so that's another thing to look for, an agenda on the district's website. So next we have 17B, which is commissioner statements and requests. The board, individual commissioners may make a public statement limited to 5 minutes. Do we have any statements? Okay.
I just wanted to, in regards to the general manager search, I wanted to point out for clarification that when the general manager brings staffing concerns to the board in closed session, that we have to treat that as confidential information, and that's why the interim position was not public information right away, and I understand that that caused some confusion in the public, and I apologize for that, but we are bound by the Brown Act for the closed session items. And for the permanent general manager search, we have a survey now, I think, on the Harbor District website to solicit public input regarding the desired qualifications for a general manager to be hired. And Brent Ives, who we're working with as a headhunter on the search, he has already met with several stakeholders, with fishermen, with Supervisor Don Horsley, several members of the community to solicit input. And he met with LAFCO executive officer. And we would also like to additionally receive feedback from the public and accommodate that as best as we can too. And based on that feedback, the advertisement will be designed and posted by April 1st. However, I want to also point out that we cannot publicly announce the names of the candidates, of the applicants, because their privacy must be maintained. If they apply for an interview by the board and they get not chosen by the board for the position, that can be detrimental to their career or to their current employment. So we have to maintain their privacy, and I hope that everybody understands that, you know, the district, we would hurt ourselves by making those names public, because we would potentially get less resumes or applications, because the candidates would be a lot more vulnerable in this process. So for the interim general manager search, Brent Ives has contacted a number of services and agencies, as well as individuals who could perform the desired services. Mainly, we're looking for administrative skills and management. And using these placement agencies to find knowledgeable and experienced candidates is a very common way to conduct the search because former city managers and general managers make themselves available through these agencies for temporary positions after retirement. So that's a very common process. We're currently working with 3 or 4 placement firms. The search committee, Brent Ives, Tom Mateusz, and myself, we're interviewing this week, and next week we have currently 4 or possibly 5 candidates that we're interviewing, and we'll hopefully have an interview lined up by the full board within 2 weeks. The candidate pool from the applications that we've received is unfortunately reduced by the short availability or the short scheduling for this position, and to an extent also unfortunately due to the reputation of the district that hasn't helped. Some candidates have withdrawn after, you know, when we get their applications, we start our process of researching the candidate as well as they research the district. So some candidates have withdrawn after doing that. These candidates all have to, I want to really make that clear, they all have a lot of work experience. They have been in the field for 35 plus years. They have all worked for several different boards and city councils with different political directions, and so they all come with some baggage and with some opposition, especially since we are in the Bay Area. There's always going to be some political pushback, so no one comes with a clean slate, and we will likely not find the ideal candidate that everybody likes. So we have to, but we will find qualified and knowledgeable candidates that can do the job that we need them for this short-term or temporary position for 5 to 6 months until we fill the position of the permanent general manager.
Do we have any more statements?
Can I combine 1 and 2 in the interest of time?
No.
Okay. Well, I'm particularly concerned about our staffing levels and how hard the staff are working to keep up. But I have to also say at the same time, a special district with 30 employees does not need a full-time human resource manager. That's my comment.
Thank you. Any other statements?
I have one,
Okay.
and I have one more task for Rocky before your time expires.
You got 9 hours left, so.
Just in time.
What do you got?
I would like to file a missing persons report. We have had in the audience here at Oyster Point a fellow by the name of Ernie for decades. And I have not seen him since the turn of the year. And does anybody know where he is, what happened to him?
No.
Last, if I may, last we heard that he had the boat hauled and he was supposedly rebuilding it.
Was it Sausalito?
I think it was in Sausalito. He had like,
He was still
Yeah.
having issues with one of the boat yards still.
yeah, but he was like gonna redo the whole
Yeah.
boat, and it was in pretty dire shape. And then there was a family issue too. Something going
His
on.
mother.
His mother, right?
Well, if you see him,
But yeah,
Mr. Morello, if you see him, please tell him we miss him.
absolutely,
You know, he's just,
for sure. Yeah.
it was a friendly face to see.
Sure.
So thank you, Rocky.
I'll put that together.
We'll find Ernie.
Yeah. Where's Waldo?
Yeah, where's Waldo?
I just had a brief statement regarding the executive search. I really appreciated Commissioner David's comments because I think it helped clarify some confusion on the part of probably many people about the search process. One thing that still is a question in my mind is I know I've as board president, I've gotten emails from various people that have, you know, been interested in the position of general manager and wanted to know what the process was. I'm still confused as to whether the process allows for people that don't have a placement, that are not going through a placement firm or an HR firm to apply. So that, and I don't need an answer right now, but I think there's still some confusion about the process and whether it's open to people that aren't going through a firm. So I think that's something that needs to be clarified in the future. And then the other thing is the process for interviewing. I still, as a commissioner, have some confusion about the interview process for the board, and so I feel like, you know, I don't know how we're going to sort that out, but I think we need to revisit the process. And I noticed that it appeared that other staff positions in addition to general manager were being potentially swept into a contract for the general manager. And I need, as a board member, further clarification on that part of the process as well, because I don't want to be surprised by a contract that includes more than one position when that isn't what I was aware we were doing, although I can understand why that might happen. I just think that, you know, it'd be good to get the process clarified so that there are no surprises along the way. So that's just some feedback, take it or leave it. And that's my only comment. So if nobody else has any other commissioner comments, I'm going to go on to commissioner requests for agenda items. So that's 17B2, and I believe Commissioner Matoush mentioned he had something.
Yes, I'd like to see an RFP issued so that we can gather options for examining a part-time HR manager with commensurate full-time support options. I'd like to see this agendized for discussion or the fastest possible route to an RFP. I'd like to see the district covered in a way that all the employees feel comfortable and yet it's cost effective for the district.
I have a question. Are you talking about a part-time consultant for HR, because that's usually how special districts do it? Or are you talking about an employee that's hired as a part-time employee working for the district?
I think the RFP process would determine that.
So it could be either,
Correct.
is what you're saying? Okay, I just wasn't clear. Thank you for clarifying that. So you're requesting that agenda item to be placed on a future agenda?
Yes, as soon as possible to help the staff here. And if we can, I guess we can't really put out an RFP right now without discussing it, so it'll have to be agendized, the sooner the better.
And I'm assuming you don't want it April 1st because you're not going to be there.
I believe 4 of you would be, either that or the 15th.
Are you back?
The 15th, for sure.
Okay. So do you need, does he need to restate that request for an item, or was that clear to you?
I have, as soon as possible, to agendaize an RFP for a part-time HR position with full-time possibility.
And I heard April 15th.
Okay, well, I think what I had originally read was I'd like to see this agendized for discussion or the fastest possible route to an RFP.
I believe the board needs to approve the RFP, and I don't know if it's possible to do it by April 1st. Your general manager is not.
Could you specify a date for that agenda item? And if you're gonna ask for an agenda item, you need to ideally be at the meeting.
April 15th.
Do you want to restate the motion since I read it improperly? I believe you said I had something incorrect.
No, I think you had it right. You're fine.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Roll call?
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner David?
Aye.
Commissioner Matoush?
Aye.
Commissioner Paravano?
Aye.
President Brennan?
Aye. Okay, any other requests for agenda items? Yes. Oh, go ahead.
I would like to bring back the community sustainability plan not on April 1st, but April 15th. Because the full board did support the community sustainability plan back in January, and I would like to make sure that we have a fuller discussion when the Harbor District General Manager's back, and so that we could have that discussion.
Well, question, will this be the meeting where Henry gives the presentation about it? Because we haven't gotten a presentation yet.
Ideally, yes.
So
But
you want-
again, it would have to be in
Stop order.
consultation with Scott Grinby.
Okay, so you want to say tentatively,
April 15th, if that's possible.
tentatively if they can both do it?
Yeah, if they're both available and within that time period, they could put all the materials together, and if not, then it would be pushed to May.
Okay, is that clear enough to you,
Yes.
Debbie?
Mhm.
Okay, can we get somebody second this? I'll second it.
Thank you.
Roll call?
No, I have a question.
Oh, okay.
How does the motion fit into the stop order status that we have with Lisa West Consulting?
Just for clarification, we didn't stop work on that component of their project. We only stopped work on the other components.
Let's see here.
We agreed as a board to continue with that component, but we stopped work until we hired a permanent general manager on all other components. And you can go back to the meeting video if you want to.
It says in this letter, dated January 12th, the first condition, stop all work to the project for up to 6 months while the search for a new general manager position occurs and while the new board members familiarize themselves with the project. During this time, the district will be in direction with the board, will contact you if and when the project is to again start in efforts of completing the project.
It says nothing about the community sustainability.
Item number 2.
Thank you.
Immediately work with the acting general manager, Scott Grinby, to establish and negotiate a cost for the completion of the community sustainability plan portion of the strategic plan, business plan so that it can be brought back to the district for approval at the January 21st board meeting. So you've got to deal with those conditions of the stop, suspend notice.
Any other comments? Can we get a roll call?
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner David?
Aye.
Commissioner Mathush?
Aye.
Commissioner Carvana?
Aye.
President Brennan?
Aye. Okay, Commissioner David?
Yeah, so Commissioner Mathush and I, we've put our heads together to think about more about how we can help the harbors thrive, and we came up with an idea for some kind of a fishing community outreach event to the residents of San Mateo County, to inform them about the benefits of local seafood. And we haven't really worked out all the details yet, but the idea is basically to plan an event maybe at the College of San Mateo where we can include residents from both sides of the peninsula and provide information in a dynamic presentation form to the public about the accomplishments regarding sustainability and the environment and the economic values to the county, and maybe have a physician talk about benefits to heart health, and really promote the work that the fishing community has invested and the benefits from it. And so this would be kind of like a fair with some presentations, and Commissioner Mathush and myself, we would plan that event completely. We would organize it, get speakers, advertise it, and work with the fishermen. I've talked to a couple of fishermen, they seemed enthusiastic about something like that, and they would definitely help out, so it would be it would not be an extra burden to staff, and it would be very low cost, because I think the Harbor District can rent the facilities at a publicly funded college for free. And so to discuss that further, like, we would develop a little bit more of an event plan and bring that to the board if the board agrees to put this on the agenda for discussion on April 15th.
Boy, April 15th is getting busy.
I should have not let it go Robert first. But we would prepare the memo and the item completely, and maybe take up 15 minutes or so at the most.
Okay, is that clear to you, Debbie? Mm-hmm. I'll second. Any discussion?
Well, I believe this would also further fit hand in glove with the community sustainability plan. And I believe that the Half Moon Bay Seafood Marketing Association and the Groundfish Marketing Association would be excited to participate in this. However, I shouldn't speak for them, I'm not a member.
Sounds great. Anybody else? Okay, can we get a roll call?
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner David?
Aye.
Commissioner Mathush?
Aye.
Commissioner Carvana?
Aye.
President Brennan?
Aye.
I have an item I'd like to put on the next agenda. At the February 11th workshop that was conducted by Brent Ives, we went through a process. And in the concluding that process was establishing a set of norms. And he highly recommended that these norms be adopted and approved by the full commission. And I would like to have this on this item of approving these board, what he calls board norms, at our next meeting,
April 1st.
April 1st.
I'll second. Any discussion? Hearing none, can we get a roll call?
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner David?
Aye.
Commissioner Mathush?
Aye.
Commissioner Carvana?
Aye.
President Brennan?
Aye. Okay. So I, in the past, have requested that the facility survey report be presented to the board. That has it's still on our list of future agenda items, and it's gotten kind of pushed down the list as other items have moved forward. I think that item is pretty darn important if we're ever gonna get to a point where we can move through the strategic planning process. I also think that that report's really critical to responding to the municipal service review draft report, which according to LAFCO, the LAFCO director today the draft report should be completed. She's expecting by the middle of May, and at that point, the district will need to start working on a response. And I think it's really critical that the board have a good understanding of the facilities survey, which was produced by Moffitt Nichols, and we've already paid for. It's, you know, it's an interesting report. It also ties into our budget because there's a prioritization of work that needs to be done at both Oyster Point and Pillar Point, and those things are outlined in the facility survey. And in order for the board to make informed decisions about how to prioritize spending, we need to understand, you know, the state of affairs with the facilities. So I just want to reiterate the importance of that. And although I'm pretty pressed for time, if I had to produce the PowerPoint myself, which is not ideal, I'd be willing to do it. But I'm not going to say April 1st or April 15th because I think April's getting pretty busy. But I think that, you know, it could be that we need to hold a special meeting just to focus on this, or maybe this should become part of our budget workshop. Somehow we've really got to get to this. So, you know, I don't know, I'm interested from the board. Am I the only one that wants to hear this presentation, or are you guys, are you interested in prioritizing this? Is there any feedback?
No, let's bring it forward.
Okay, so, let's say, June, I don't know, first meeting in June, or sooner?
Or sooner.
No later than the first meeting in June. And when is our budget workshop, by the way?
April 15th.
Which is our regular meeting, or what? How's that?
No, it's 2:30 to 5:30 is your budget workshop, a break for dinner, and then the 6:30 meeting will commence at the yacht club, and it will say special meeting since it's not public.
And I'm sorry, what time does I'm sorry, I missed that. What time does the budget workshop start, the earliest time?
2:30.
2:30? Could we add this to that workshop day so we get this done?
I would need to talk to the director of finance. Well, how much time would you like to allot for this?
I think we could probably get through the report in 1 hour, maybe less. And I think it would directly tie to the workshop itself. So maybe we could check with her and see how to work that out.
It's a budget workshop.
I mean, it's a special meeting, we can agendize it any way we want.
So we would add
I
that.
need to check with the facilities, so I'll make sure we can.
Okay, and if I need to help produce the PowerPoint, I'm happy to do that, you know, with the bullet points and stuff.
So 2 things, it's 9:30, so maybe we could take a motion to extend if we're not done. And then I need you to, I guess
Well, okay, I need like five more minutes. Can I get a motion to extend for 10 minutes?
Well, excuse me, just don't mind, there is also agendized a closed session, so I think 10 minutes might be, unless you're not planning on holding a closed session, you might need longer than 10 minutes.
Oh, we have to agendize or we have to extend for closed session as well.
Correct.
Well, then I move that we extend the meeting by 1 hour. Second. Roll call?
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner David? Commissioner Matoush?
Aye.
Commissioner Paravano?
No.
President Brennan?
Aye. So let me be quick. So today the board received a letter, which I have here somewhere. I don't know what they did with it.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Brennan, have you moved
I'm still requesting agenda items.
Right,
But the one you just requested has not been voted on, so if you
Oh.
moved on to something else,
Oh.
I just want to
Oh, we
stop
didn't
you.
vote. Okay, we got the second though.
No?
Okay.
No, so you want the facility condition survey to be presented prior to the budget workshop?
Yes.
On April 15th?
Yes.
Okay.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call?
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner David?
Aye.
Commissioner Mathush?
Aye.
Commissioner Caravana? President Brennan?
Aye. Okay, today we received a letter, from Dan Blick, no, sorry, from Joe Falcone, who works with Dan Blick, regarding the Fish Line app, requesting a presentation at the April 1st meeting. I move that we allow Dan Blick to give a very short, he said it would be a very short presentation on the Fish Line app at the April 1st meeting. Can I get a second? Second. Any discussion? Roll call?
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner David?
Aye.
Commissioner Mathush?
Aye.
Commissioner Caravana? President Brennan?
Aye. Okay, that's it. So, next we have closed session, and I can't adjourn this meeting, right, because closed session is part of it.
Correct.
Okay, so,
Just one question before you announce the closed session.
Yeah.
Scott can be, Brandy not being here, if you want to identify a designee for him, you're welcome.
so I move that we designate,
You don't have to move, you can just announce it.
oh,
If you, I mean, there's a series of things that need to be announced before we adjourn into closed session.
do we have to identify that we're going into closed session with our real estate agent and our attorney?
Yes.
Okay. So would someone like to, or you want me to just say that?
I don't want to presume to step on your
So-
show, but someone needs to say that we're about to go into closed session under Government Code Section 54956.8 and list the properties, list the negotiators, and list the people with whom we are negotiating.
Got
And
it.
if you would like to name a replacement designee for Scott Grindy, you may do that also.
Okay, got it. So we are about to go into closed session. This is agenda item 18, conference with real property negotiators. California Government Code Section 54956.8, properties 504 Avenue Alhambra, El Granada, California 94018, 225 South Cabrillo Highway, Half Moon Bay, 94019, 400 Oyster Point Boulevard, Suite 300, South San Francisco, California 94080, 270 Capistrano Road, Half Moon Bay, California 94019, and the district negotiators are Stephen Miller and Randy Kinghorn. Negotiating parties, Working Dirt LLC, Billy Daniels, Castro Partners LLC, Marcus Wood, Cushman and Wakefield, Scott Eanes, Pillar Point Property Developers LLC, Keith Nearhan. Under negotiation, price and terms of payment. So we will now adjourn to closed session.